Chapter 308. The Yao clan recalled their interactions with Qin Yining and smiled. Father, I'm afraid you're overthinking things. Oh. Yao Qinggu put down his pipe and looked serious. What do you mean overthinking things? I think Miss Qin is a smart person. She knows when to advance and when to retreat. She's well-mannered. I deliberately said some harsh words to her, but she didn't get angry. She responded beautifully. Moreover, she has always been respectful to her elders. She's not an arrogant and willful person. She also seems to be very familiar with the situation in the imperial court. The more the Yao clan spoke, the more satisfied they were with Qin Yining. Their smiles gradually deepened. I heard that Lord Qin only has one daughter. Judging from her manner of speech today, it's clear that Lord Qin's family has a very good upbringing. I think Lord Qin is also a smart and well-mannered person. He doesn't care about the situation in the imperial court. He only cares about character. Family Qin is a good choice for in-laws. Madame Ma, who was at the side, snorted. You father and daughter are thinking too much and planning too much. In my opinion, our Dafu is such a smart child. How can the person he has set his mind on be bad? But you two, the girl came all the way here. You two actually deliberately tested her. Aren't you afraid of ruining the Daifu's plans? Yao Qinggu listened to his old wife speak louder and louder. In the end, she almost slammed the table. However, he didn't get angry. He just smiled and listened to her scolding. When Madame Ma finished, he said gently, "Don't be angry. We also want to check on the Daifu." Moreover, if Miss Qin was annoyed by Yuping's casual testing words, it only proves that the girl is not suitable for our Daifu. Yes, mother. The Yao clan nodded. Madame Ma snorted. Family Qin's girl was annoyed. That's because you went overboard. How can you blame her? You deliberately tested her. Can't she be annoyed? Mother, that's not what I meant. The Yao clan explained gently. Our Daifu's position in the imperial court is very tense. Although he's a prince with a different surname and has unlimited power, Your Majesty's fear, the hatred of the old officials in Beiji, and the existence of the big families are all problems for our Daifu. The Daifu's foundation is shallow and the position. If we can't have a smart and steady girl as a good wife, not only will harm the Daifu but also our family Qin. Yes. Yao Qinggu also said, this is not to make things difficult for the girl of the Qin family, but to see if she is suitable to marry into our family. If her temperament is not suitable, she will suffer when she marries into our family in the future. It is better to catch the source from the beginning. Think about it first. If Dafu's wife is not able to suppress the situation, it will not only be Dafu who will suffer, but also the two families will suffer. You father and son are so reasonable. Madame Ma was not stupid, but she was not as thoughtful as the father and daughter. After listening to Yao Qinggu and the Yao clan's analysis, she understood what they meant. In the end, she said pertinently, your idea is good, and it's also out of good intentions. It's just that your method is not honorable. It's fine to test her once. Miss Qin is a girl from a big family. She's not a commodity waiting to be sold. How can she be tested and chosen by you? You're right, mother. The Yao clan nodded with a smile. Yao Qinggu also smiled and said, we'll listen to you. Madame Ma snorted. When she thought that Pang Xiao finally had a girl he liked and that she might soon have a great-grandson to hold, her mood became even better. At this time, Qin Yining was holding Pang Xiao's hand as they walked slowly on the path to the study in the outer courtyard. The stone tiles on the ground were arranged neatly in the shape of fish scales, and the accumulated snow had been swept clean. Only a few white lines remained in the gaps between the tiles. The thick white snow on the courtyard walls would be blown up by the wind, and under the warm afternoon sun, it looked especially sparkling and translucent. If they ignored the servants who often bowed, Qin Yining was actually very willing to walk hand in hand with Pang Xiao. "Didn't you say that you have an appointment with Mr. Xia and Mr. Su? Can we not hurry over now?" Qin Yining withdrew his hand and pretended to look away as if nothing had happened. He deliberately did not look at the servant who was curiously looking at him when he bowed just now. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "There's no hurry. It's okay for them to wait." His slightly rough fingers gently touched her ears. "Look, your ears are red. Are you cold?" This person was asking the obvious. He was too bad. "Touching me. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others? What's so funny? Who doesn't know that this king has taken the young miss of the family Qin home? It would be strange if I only treat you with respect when I go to the mansion." As Pang Xiao spoke, he reached out and pulled Qin Yining into his arms. He leaned close to her ear and said, "The more I am like this, the more real it is." Qin Yining blinked and asked in a low voice, somewhat nervous, "Are there many spies in your mansion?" Pang Xiao smiled and said, "There are spies in all kinds of places that are not important. But you don't have to worry. I know what to do." Qin Yining nodded. If the mansion was protected by Pang Xiao like an iron bucket, then Emperor Zhou would be even more worried, right? He could put in a few spies at an appropriate time. As long as he controlled the channels through which these people received information, he could control the situation. Perhaps these spies could be used at a critical moment. Seeing Qin Yining obediently nod and not ask any more questions, Pang Xiao couldn't help but pinch her face. "You know everything like this. It makes me seem useless." Qin Yining smiled, "Prince, you have plenty of opportunities to use your skills. You have to rush back to recuperate and pave the way for my father to watch in the future. You also have to worry about whether the elders in the mansion will make things difficult for me. You still have to think of ways to make me happy. Your heart is about to be broken into pieces. How can this be called useless? You know everything." Although Pang Xiao knew that Qin Yining would understand him, he still couldn't help but feel happy when he heard these words from her mouth. "How could I not know what you've done for me?" Qin Yining sighed softly and slowly stopped in her tracks. Pang Xiao also stopped and lowered his head to look at her. He smoothed out the strands of hair by her ears and tightened her collar. Qin Yining raised her head to look at his smiling eyes. Every time this man faced her, he would restrain all of his sharpness and only show his most special side in front of her. When he found out that she was in danger, he knew that he might not be able to find her. However, he still disregarded the risk of being suspected by Emperor Zhou and secretly mobilized his troops. In order to not delay the development of family Qin's future in Dezhou, he disregarded his own reputation and acted like a bandit in front of people. He didn't care about what other people said about him. The reason why Emperor Zhou took in surrendered officials was to balance the relationship between the old Northern Ji officials and the new nobles. The surrendered officials of the Yan dynasty were led by Qin Huaiyuan. Once a family Qin member arrived, they would definitely be put in an important position. Since Emperor Zhou was so afraid of Pang Xiao, how could he allow Pang Xiao to have such a powerful family? If Pang Xiao showed her his devotion like he did in Dian, Qin Huaiyuan's career and family Qin's development would be cut off. Qin Yining sighed and leaned into his embrace. She pressed the side of her face against his chest and wrapped her arms around his thin waist. Pang Xiao was surprised and happy. This was the first time Qin Yining took the initiative to hug her in front of others. He was so stunned that he didn't know where to put his arms. After a while, he came back to his senses and gradually tightened his embrace. His chin rubbed against her forehead. "Are you cold?" N. It's really cold here. It's even colder than Liang City. However, I feel very at ease now. To be able to make the woman he loved feel at ease was the greatest praise for a man. His was so considerate. She had clearly gone through a lot of hardships, was almost killed, and almost froze and starved to death in the mountains. After she was found, she worked hard to fill in the gaps in his impulsive and unreliable plan. Yet, when she saw him, she never complained about it, nor did she show a trace of grievance. It was as if she should bear all of this. He clearly didn't clear the obstacles for her and held up the sky where she could breathe freely. However, she used the words, "feel at ease," to repay his imperfections. Pang Xiao closed his eyes and kissed her forehead heavily. "No matter what, you're already by my side now. As long as you're right under my nose, not beyond my reach, and not on tenterhooks, everything is nothing." Qin Yining smiled. "You're right. If there's anything, we'll bear it together. There's nothing to be afraid of." Pang Xiao also smiled. His thumb brushed against her lips. The warm and soft touch made his eyes blur. However, she shyly took 2 steps back to avoid it. "Let's go to the study. It's rude to keep people waiting." Pang Xiao nodded helplessly. He held Qin Yining's hand in his and used his warm palm to warm her slightly cold fingers. He smiled and said, "Although the prince's mansion is big, the only place I'm often active in is the study in the outer courtyard. I usually rest in the study. If there's anything you need, you can come find me directly. After all, I was kidnapped by you. It's not good for me to go too far. I want to directly tie you up in the study. However, if my family saw that, they would look down on you in the future. I can only do this." When the two arrived at the study in the outer courtyard while chatting, Huzi was already standing in front of the door with her hands crossed. She was almost frozen into an ice sculpture. "Wang Yi, you're here. Mr. Su and Mr. Xia have already eaten 3 cups of tea." Huzi bounced on the spot a few times and then came forward to salute Qin Yining. "Fourth Miss, hello." Pang Xiao said seriously, "We have something important to discuss. Tell the people to guard the study." Huzi saw that Pang Xiao was so serious and immediately straightened her expression. She saluted and said, "Yes." The study was the same as the upper courtyard. There was a heated Kong by the window. The Kong was warm and there was a soft dark blue mattress on top of it. There was also a brazier on the ground with good quality silver frost charcoal burning in it. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao took off their cloaks and sat down. Xia Yu and Su Weiji, who had been waiting in the side room for a long time, came in together. There were dozens of people following behind the two of them. They were all dressed like scholars. Qin Yining said in surprise, "These are all your aides?" "Yes." Pang Xiao smiled and nodded. "Today, I only invited some core people for you to get to know." Qin Yining couldn't help but click his tongue. Pang Xiao actually had so many aides. Chapter 309. Qin Yining did not dare to be arrogant. Right now, her status was just the daughter of a surrendered official, and she was not related to Pang Xiao. These advisors were all capable people under Pang Xiao's command. They were all older than her, so she did not feel it was inappropriate when she returned the greeting. Qin Yining's courteous actions caused the advisors to have a slightly better impression of her. But after seeing her beautiful appearance, everyone's impression of her worsened again. Such a natural charm and seductive behavior, no wonder a hero like Wang Yi would lose his mind. He would rather take the risk of facing your majesty and take the risk of sending troops to search for her. This woman, was it that the one surnamed Qin was afraid that Wang Yi would seek revenge on him, so he sent her to charm Wang Yi? It was clear that these brainy elites had demonized Qin Yining a long time ago. Qin Yining was very sensitive. Even though these advisors did not express anything inappropriate, she could still feel that they did not like her. However, she did not need to think to understand the reason. Therefore, she only smiled and retreated to the side. She was not a Wang Fei, and her status as a family Qin was not clear. She could interact with Pang Xiao however she wanted in private, but she knew that she could not overstep the rules in front of others. Pang Xiao frowned. Seeing Qin Yining being so careful, and seeing the attitude of his advisors towards Qin Yining, he felt displeased inside. Just as he was about to scold her, Qin Yining turned around first. She bent her knees and said, "Wang Yi, is there any news of my father and family in the past few days?" When she asked this, her watery eyes blinked mischievously at him. Pang Xiao immediately recovered his mind. Yes, advisors were not like other people. He could not use forceful methods to force them to submit to Qin Yining. Qin Yining probably knew this as well. A person's good opinion of another person would not appear suddenly. Pang Xiao believed that Qin Yining had the means to make these people submit willingly. Therefore, Pang Xiao put the matter aside and turned to look at the leader, an elegant man in his 40s. He said, "Sir Su, is there any news of family Qin?" This man was Su Weiji. He was quick-witted and good at scheming. His cooperation with Xiaoyu, who was good at making decisions, was seamless. He was Pang Xiao's most important advisor. Su Weiji smiled and cupped his hands in salute. He said, "Wang Yi, there is no news of family Qin yet. However, the county king of Yan, the Li family, the Gu family, and a few other families have been found by your Majesty's team. They should be arriving in the capital in the next few days." When Qin Yining heard this, she became more worried. Although she knew that there would be silver-masked spies protecting her father and mother, she could not be completely at ease without seeing them alive and well. Fortunately, Chao Yuqing and the silver-masked spies were there. When the incapable emperor abdicated, the silver-masked spies, who had been highly regarded by the incapable emperor, became masterless. The new emperor would not use the remaining spies of the old emperor. Therefore, the silver-masked spies had no idea what to do for a while and no one paid them. Qin Huaiyuan used Chao Yuqing's relationship to completely recruit the silver-masked spies for his own use. Qin Yining could only comfort herself that the spies were highly skilled and should be able to find her father and mother and protect them on their way to the capital. Suppressing the worry in her heart, Qin Yining asked, "Was this assassination attempt by Marquis Dingbei's doing?" Pang Xiao nodded and instructed the staff to take a seat. He also had Qin Yining sit next to him. Then, he said to Su Weiji and Xiaoyu, "Why don't you explain to Miss Qin?" When the staff saw Pang Xiao arrange the seat for Qin Yining and his attitude towards Qin Yining, they could already guess what was going on. Among the staff, Su Weiji and Xiaoyu were the most respected people aside from Zheng Pei. Therefore, when Pang Xiao asked them to explain to Qin Yining, the staff were even more certain. Even if they had doubts about Qin Yining, they temporarily suppressed them. Su Weiji also felt very surprised and didn't immediately speak. On the other hand, Xiaoyu had interacted with Qin Yining for a long time and understood Qin Yining's character and strategy very well. Therefore, she said with an extremely respectful attitude, "Miss Qin, regarding Marquis Dingbei's assassination attempt on the Dian troops, I believe that as long as you understand the situation in the capital, you'll naturally understand." Qin Yining smiled and said, "I'm new here and don't really understand the situation in the capital. Please enlighten me, teacher." Xiaoyu repeatedly said that she didn't dare and politely said, "Miss Qin is someone that Wang Yi regards highly. You're not an outsider, so I'll be direct. Back when Wang Yi followed your majesty to conquer the world, he became sworn brothers with your majesty and Marquis Dingbei, right?" Qin Yining nodded with a smile. Xiaoyu said, Marquis Dingbei is a calm person with a cold temperament. He speaks bluntly to outsiders, but his relationship with Wang Yi has always been very good. This time, Marquis Dingbei's assassination attempt on the Dian troops might be because he wants to avenge Wang Yi. As soon as she said this, everyone in the room discreetly sized up Qin Yining. Qin Yining didn't mind and said understandingly, when General Qing died, my father did use the tactic of sowing discord. Even if the tyrant of Beiji had long wanted to get rid of General Qing, he only used the tactic of sowing discord. However, the disaster did indeed arise because of this. In the eyes of outsiders, Wang Yi indeed has an irreconcilable enmity with family Qin and Dian. That's right. Xiaoyu smiled when she saw Qin Yining being so honest. Everyone thought that Wang Yi would definitely kill family Qin to avenge himself. Among the troops of Dian who surrendered, there were family Qin members. Therefore, it was obvious that Wang Yi didn't succeed in his revenge this time. Wang Yi didn't have time to accept the letter of surrender from the county king of Yan before he returned to the capital. Coincidentally, he met Marquis Dingbei, who was returning to the capital to report on his work. That's why this happened. Qin Yining nodded when he heard this. After pondering for a moment, he felt that something was amiss. Didn't Mr. Xie just say that Marquis Dingbei is a calm and intelligent person who is cold to others? But this time, his actions really don't match his personality. Qin Yining frowned as he analyzed, why would a calm and intelligent person take a detour and kill the surrendered officials who were important to your majesty on the way back to his base after reporting on his work? Even if he wanted to avenge his brother, his actions were too extreme and direct. Qin Yining had already heard some news in private. When he combined it with what Xiaoyu had said and recalled the scene that day, he felt that something was amiss. That day, Marquis Dingbei led his troops and asked his subordinates to disguise themselves as bandits. He ordered them to charge into the crowd and kill randomly. If he wanted to kill my family members to avenge Wang Ye's father, then his actions were too careless. If that's all he has and he didn't even investigate the enemy's situation before taking action and was so impulsive and brainless, then it doesn't match Mr. Xie's evaluation of him as a calm and intelligent person. Moreover, if he was really such a person, I'm afraid he wouldn't be as famous as Wang Yi today. The room was silent. All the aides were deep in thought. Chapter 310. This was the first time the advisors had gathered together to discuss Ji Ziyu's matter, so they all had some thoughts in their hearts. However, what surprised them the most was that Miss Family Qin was actually so sharp. She didn't seem like a daughter raised in a boudoir who didn't know much about the world. Qin Yining sensed everyone's gaze and continued, I don't know much about North Placating Marquis, but when I recall how North Placating Marquis led his men to recklessly kill the Yi Qi, there were many suspicious points. With North Placating Marquis's ability, if he wanted to kill someone from the family Qin, it would be impossible for him to find the wrong person. Even I know why your majesty accepted the Dian surrendered subjects. How could North Placating Marquis, who is in the officialdom, not know? He deliberately went to recklessly kill people and disregarded your majesty's wishes to attack the surrendered subjects. Could it be that he wasn't afraid of your majesty's condemnation? Perhaps I am being narrow-minded, but I don't think that North Placating Marquis's brotherly love with Wang Yi would make him disregard his own safety to seek revenge. Moreover, he didn't find the right person to seek revenge. He wouldn't be so impulsive or so stupid. At this point, Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao next to him and asked, North Placating Marquis is equally famous as Wang Yi. Now, he should be like Wang Yi, troubled by his meritorious service that shocks the emperor, right? Pang Xiao didn't answer. She just sat there silently with a calm expression on her face. Qin Yining's thoughts were clear. Based on her rough understanding of the situation in the capital, she was able to analyze so many key points. Although the advisors present might not necessarily be unable to think of these, for a young woman to be able to point out the problems of the current situation so thoroughly, they had no choice but to admit her ability. At this time, the advisors were no longer looking at Qin Yining as a femme fatale. They seemed to know why Pang Xiao looked at her in a different light. Such beauty was rare, but what was even rarer was that she was intelligent and could keep up with Wang Ye's footsteps. It was inevitable that people would have a whole new level of respect for her. Su Weiji stood up and personally picked up the teapot to refill Qin Yining's untouched tea. Then, he put down the teapot and said with a smile, "Miss Qin's vision is unique and has many ideas." This old man and Miss Qin happened to coincide. His attitude was polite and was no longer as cold as before, which made Pang Xiao nod secretly. The people around him were also very surprised. Su Weiji cupped his hands to Pang Xiao and said, "Wang Yi, I've told you before that Marquis Dingbei's actions are not simple. Now that Miss Qin is new here, she can understand the complexity of it. It shows that my deduction is not without basis. Wang Yi is a sentimental person, but you can't let your guard down." Pang Xiao nodded calmly. Su Weiji sighed and said, "Wang Yi is a sentimental and righteous person. This is Wang Ye's strong point and also the reason why we are willing to follow Wang Yi. However, people's hearts change and the situation changes. This is something that can't be helped. Although Marquis Dingbei and Wang Yi have deep feelings for each other, his current situation is similar to Wang Ye's. Both of them have great achievements and are feared by others. Marquis Dingbei will also do his best to survive. He won't ruin his life because of simple sentimental matters." "That's right, I think so too." The rest of the advisors also nodded and sighed, sighing deeply. Qin Yining could understand Pang Xiao's complicated feelings. Out of the 3 sworn brothers, one was already against him. If there was one more, it would be equivalent to completely destroying the oath they made that day. If this happened to anyone, they wouldn't feel good. However, in this world, if one wanted to survive, they had to accept reality. Su Weiji had wanted to say something to Pang Xiao several times, but because of the relationship between Pang Xiao and Jiziyu, he couldn't find a chance to speak. Today, Qin Yining's words gave him a chance. "Everyone, this old man thinks that Marquis Dingbei is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. First, he wants to express goodwill to Wang Yi. Second, he wants to rope in the old officials of Beiji. Third, he wants to sell your majesty a mistake. What do you think?" These dozen people usually discuss things like this. Moreover, they knew that Qin Yining was someone Wang Yi trusted, so they didn't avoid discussing it. Someone said, "It's understandable that he wants to express goodwill to Wang Yi. After all, Wang Yi and Marquis Dingbei haven't seen each other for a long time. Even if they know each other's news, they will drift apart if they don't contact each other. Marquis Dingbei cherishes his friendship with Wang Yi, so it's natural for him to express goodwill." However, as Su Weiji said, Marquis Dingbei isn't just expressing goodwill. "I'm afraid this is just an excuse. The other 2 points are his true motives." "That's true. The arrival of the surrendered officials of the Yan dynasty will definitely take away some of the power of the remaining officials of Beiji. Although Marquis Dingbei's actions won't necessarily make the old officials of Beiji grateful to him, at least these people won't stab him in the back when he returns to the north." "That's right. Marquis Dingbei's merit is too great. He's meticulous in his actions and doesn't leave any mistakes. Your Majesty wants to control him, but he's too slippery. This may seem good on the surface, but in the long run, it won't be good for Marquis Dingbei. You have to know that when an emperor wants to use people that he can control, he will only feel assured." "That's right. After Marquis Dingbei killed the Dayan troops and returned to the capital to ask for forgiveness, he's purposely giving your Majesty something to use against him. In this way, your majesty will feel assured and will feel that there's a way to dispose of this sharp weapon when he's not using it. Qin Yining quietly listened to everyone's analysis. She was curious about this kind of discussion environment, but she also liked it. Wasn't this what it meant to gather the wisdom of the masses and express their own opinions? Listening to these intelligent people's discussion allowed her to understand de Zhou's environment and benefited a lot. Unknowingly, she began to analyze today's discussion. Seeing Qin Yining deep in thought, Xia Yu smiled and said, "Miss Qin, do you have any brilliant ideas?" The advisors all looked at Qin Yining. Qin Yining didn't expect him to ask her, but she wasn't afraid. She smiled and said, "I did think of something. I think that what this gentleman just said about Marquis Dingbei's goodwill is only incidental, is a bit inappropriate." Oh. The advisor who was pointed out by Qin Yining raised his eyebrows and felt a little unconvinced. Even if Wang Yi liked this woman, she was still a woman and a young girl. How could she have better insights than these advisors? "If Miss Qin has any brilliant ideas, please enlighten me." His tone was rather stiff. Qin Yining didn't get angry. She smiled and said, "Actually, I think that Marquis Dingbei's main purpose is to express goodwill. The other 2 points that Mr. Su mentioned are incidental. After all, if it weren't for the enmity between Wang Yi and my father, Marquis Dingbei wouldn't have chosen to attack the Dian troops to achieve his goal." Once this causality was revealed, everyone was really curious about Qin Yining's opinion. Qin Yining continued, "Also, I think that other than these 3 goals, Marquis Dingbei has 2 more important goals." Mr. Su said that Marquis Dingbei is good at scheming, and it's true. His plan this time is to kill 5 birds with 1 stone. The advisor who was pointed out was very displeased with the way a woman was showing off. However, because Peng Shao was here, he couldn't say much. He only said with a straight face, "What are the other 2 points? I'd like to hear the details." Chapter 311. Qin Yining was deep in thought. He organized his words and said, "Other than giving your majesty something to use against your majesty, Marquis Dingbei is also expressing goodwill to your majesty. I'm sure that after he kills the Dian troops and returns to the palace, he will try his best to apologize and show his weakness. Your majesty will definitely change his view of a strong-willed person who is willing to submit to your majesty. Compared to Wang Ye's temperament, Marquis Dingbei's goodwill will be even more precious. After the disturbance caused by North placating Marquis, His Majesty could not say that he did not allow your highness to seek revenge in front of your highness. But now, he is in a position where he can say, 'Don't kill the innocent,' and help His Majesty to keep the surrendered subjects of Great Yen who he wants to use. The most important thing is that Marquis Dingbei is not only trying to win over the old officials of Beiji, but he is also trying to sell some benefits to the surrendered officials of Dian." Oh. Su Weiji frowned slightly when she heard this. After thinking for a while, her eyes lit up. She looked at Qin Yining in surprise and admiration and said, "Miss Qin is indeed wise." Peng Shao also looked at Qin Yining, who was smiling and speaking frankly. Her eyes were filled with admiration. Qin Yining smiled and drew circles on the lid of the bowl with her white fingertips. She continued in a soft voice. He continued, "I'm from Dian, so I understand a little about the thoughts of the Dian officials. The team entering the capital is divided into 3 groups. The first group is from 10 families following the county king of Yen. They are all outstanding Dian officials. These people should be valued by your majesty when they arrive in Dezhou. However, I'm guessing that the generals in the court must be your majesty's direct subordinates. As for the civil officials, your majesty will assign a few of his own people to important positions. The remaining positions will be equally divided between the old officials of Beiji and the surrendered Dian officials. From this, it seems that the vacancies are limited. Marquis Dingbei killed many people in the first group. The second and third groups of people from the Yen dynasty will have a higher chance of filling up the vacancies. Think about it, these people will have a bad impression of Marquis Dingbei. You're right. Although lives are at stake and the people who died tragically are innocent, those who survived will feel lucky. They will feel that it's fortunate that someone died so that they could have a chance to take up a position. Pang Xiao couldn't help but sigh when he heard her analysis. Pang Xiao rarely interfered with the discussions of his advisors. Usually, the advisors would bring up the problems to discuss. Su Weiji, who was good at planning, would come up with a few solutions. Everyone would analyze the pros and cons together. Finally, Xiaoyu, who was good at making decisions, would choose the most feasible plan. Pang Xiao would listen in during this process. He would also express his opinion at the end, but he wouldn't interrupt in the middle. His actions today were really rare. Not only Pang Xiao, but even they couldn't help but sigh for human nature after hearing Qin Yining's analysis. Everyone's impression of Qin Yining changed again. Qin Yining smiled at Pang Xiao. There's no need to think about how evil human nature can be. What I said just now should be what North Placating Marquis said in passing. Moreover, this isn't the crux of why North Placating Marquis expressed goodwill to the Dian officials. The crux of the matter is the enmity between Wang Yi and the family Qin and the Dian. Pang Xiao already understood what she meant. He said in a deep voice, it was indeed Grand Preceptor Qin who schemed to sow discord, but the person who ordered Grand Preceptor Qin to do so was an incapable ruler. When this king attacked the Dian, the people in the city said that this king was a demon who killed without batting an eye and ate human flesh and drank human blood. Presumably, the people of the Yen dynasty were also very afraid of this king. They were afraid that this king would vent his anger on them and take revenge for his father on them. Qin Yining frowned and said, yes, although Wang Yi has destroyed the Dian, he hasn't actually taken revenge for his father. Therefore, the Dian people must be worried that they will be played to death in Wang Ye's territory. Qin Yining stopped speaking at this point. This was because she knew that everyone present was smart. They didn't think of it earlier because they were people of the Zhou dynasty. Naturally, they would think from the perspective of the people of the Zhou dynasty. This didn't prove that she was much more powerful than the strategists present. She didn't finish her words and left them some space to express themselves. Sure enough, the strategists all had a contemplative look on their faces. The strategists who were pointed out by Qin Yining and were dissatisfied with her were now convinced. They sighed and said, sure enough, it's like that. North Placating Marquis didn't take revenge on a specific target, but rather killed indiscriminately. This will give the world the impression that Wang Yi killed the innocent for revenge. In this way, if Wang Yi wants to take revenge in the future, there will be a lot of pressure from public opinion. If he doesn't handle it well, his reputation might be ruined. Doesn't this solve the Dian people's worries? The strategist stood up and cupped his hands to Qin Yining and said, I'm Tao Han's Han. I hope Miss Qin can forgive me for offending you earlier. Qin Yining stood up and returned the greeting. She smiled and said, Mr. Tao, please don't be so polite. Wang Yi gave us an environment for discussion so that we can express our opinions and exchange opinions. How did Mr. Tao offend you? I was the one who was careless and spoke nonsense in front of everyone. Don't say that. Tao Han said, Miss Qin is intelligent and meticulous. I admire you. Qin Yining exchanged some modest pleasantries with Tao Han before sitting down again. The atmosphere suddenly became very relaxed. The previous hostility and exclusion of Qin Yining from the strategists completely disappeared after the conversation. Everyone now understood why Wang Yi was so deeply in love with her and even risked everything to save her. He didn't hesitate to sacrifice his reputation to rob her in order to protect his family Qin's future. A woman like this was worth cherishing. A family Qin that could raise such a daughter was also a good in-laws. When Pang Xiao saw that the haughty strategist had become respectful and cautious, his mood became so good that it was as if he had eaten a bowl of hot tea in winter. He felt warm and comfortable from the inside out. It seemed like his previous worries were unnecessary. His sister Yi wouldn't shrink back just because others had a bad first impression of her. When she encountered difficulties, she would face them head-on. She wouldn't throw a tantrum, nor would she complain. She was like a body of light. Ever since she was young, she had never backed down from anything she encountered. She had always worked hard and fought to the extreme. Pang Xiao's blood was boiling. His love for Qin Yining had reached an indescribable level. He hated that he couldn't bring her by his side every day so that she would only have him in her heart. While everyone was discussing, Huzi's voice suddenly came from outside. Pang Xiao knew that Huzi must have something important to say. He gestured for everyone to be quiet and said loudly, "Come in." Chapter 312. Qin Yining saw the strange expression on Huzi's face when he replied. He also saw that the aides were hesitant to speak, so he looked at Pang Xiao in confusion. Pang Xiao was calm and said, "I didn't expect that Ji Lan would ask for Anyang Grand Princess' hand in marriage. I didn't know that they had such a relationship before." Huzi thought to himself, "You and the Grand Princess have a relationship, but do you dare to say it in front of Fourth Miss?" Xia Yu and Su Weiji, who knew the inside story, also looked embarrassed. Qin Yining pondered over Pang Xiao's words and said with a smile, "If there is no relationship between Anyang Grand Princess and North Placating Marquis, could there be a relationship between you and her?" The room was silent. Huzi silently took a few steps back, as if he wanted to escape the storm. The aides also looked at each other, hesitating whether they should leave or not. Pang Xiao said bluntly, "When I overthrew Beiji State's tyranny, I followed your majesty all year round. Later, I became sworn brothers with your majesty, so my relationship with the Li family was very close. I often visited them, so the elders often joked about the relationship between me and the Grand Princess." "I see." Qin Yining nodded in understanding and asked, "How old is the Grand Princess?" "Since she is your majesty's sister, she shouldn't be young, right?" Pang Xiao said with a smile, "Anyang Grand Princess is the Empress Dowager's daughter. She is 18 years younger than your majesty and is about the same age as your majesty's children. Your majesty only has this one younger sister, and the Grand Princess has been intelligent since she was young, so she has been loved by your majesty. I once thought that your majesty had the intention of betrothing Anyang Grand Princess to me in order to get closer to me." At this point, Pang Xiao added seriously, "However, I have no romantic feelings for Princess Royal of Anyang." Qin Yining nodded slightly and asked Huzi, "You just said that North Placating Marquis went to the Emperor and took the initiative to ask for Anyang Grand Princess' hand in marriage?" "Yes. That's what the rumors are saying." Huzi didn't understand why Qin Yining asked this question, so he looked puzzled. Pang Xiao immediately understood her concerns and said, "You suspect that Ji Lan did not take the initiative to ask for a marriage decree?" "I do have some doubts. I wonder if there were any signs of this beforehand." Pang Xiao thought about it carefully and shook his head. There were no signs. Ji Lan did not like Princess Royal Anyang. She had been keeping a distance from her since she was young. However, perhaps Ji Lan changed her mind and decided to marry Princess Royal. It is understandable. That is indeed a possibility. But now I'm thinking of another possibility. If Anyang eldest princess was often joked about by the elders since she was young, then a young girl's admiration for heroes, plus the ambiguous hints and promises from the elders should have made her have special feelings for you. When Pang Xiao heard this, he anxiously explained, "Anyang and I are not, Wang Yi, I'm not doubting you. I'm just objectively analyzing this matter. Think about it, does Anyang eldest princess have any feelings for you?" Other people do not know about this matter, but you should know best. The room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Pang Xiao did not immediately reply and fell into deep thought. Qin Yining continued, if you and Anyang eldest princess had an ambiguous relationship before, how could North Placating Marquis not know? If North Placating Marquis knew about the matter between the two of you, his actions of taking the initiative to ask your majesty to marry Princess Royal would be the opposite of his actions of killing de Zhou's people and expressing goodwill to you. The advisors fell silent again. They had already analyzed and found out that Ji Ziyu's actions were mainly to express goodwill to Pang Xiao. The rest of his actions were derived from this condition. From this, it could be seen that Ji Ziyu still wanted to be on good terms with Pang Xiao. But if Ji Ziyu clearly knew about the relationship between Pang Xiao and Anyang eldest princess and still went to ask your majesty to grant a marriage, then wouldn't that mean that he did not care about their relationship? Therefore, Qin Yining's analysis was that this matter was very likely your majesty granting a marriage, and Ji Ziyu had no choice but to comply. If this was the case, then everything could be explained. Your majesty granted a marriage, so Ji Ziyu had to comply and could not refuse. Then your majesty would say to the people outside that this time, Ji Ziyu took the initiative to ask for a marriage. Then Pang Xiao, who was once a candidate for the emperor's son-in-law, would more or less create some animosity between Ji Ziyu. The most important thing was that the person Anyang eldest princess liked was most likely Pang Xiao. If she married Ji Ziyu with love for Pang Xiao, would Ji Ziyu not care? At that time, there would be more disputes. Qin Yining had so many thoughts in her mind, but her expression did not change at all. She also did not intend to say it out loud. After all, when it came to matters of the heart, she also respected Pang Xiao's privacy and did not want to get to the bottom of this matter. The advisors were not stupid. At this time, everyone had already guessed in their hearts. Pang Xiao thought for a while, then smiled domineeringly. He stood up with his hands behind his back and said self-mockingly, "This king's current situation, does it mean that he is besieged on all sides, huh?" He flicked his sleeve and said, "Look, the old officials of Northern Ji hate me to the bone. Dian surrendered officials are afraid of me. Previously, because of the matter of the soldiers' pay, the brothers who rebelled with me also have some doubts about me. Your Majesty not only took away my military power, but now, if Ji Lan also turns against me, I will really be weakened and become a lonely person." Pang Xiao's detailed words were all the truth. He did not show any emotion, and it could even be heard that he was in a good mood. However, Pang Xiao's aides felt a sense of crisis, as if a dark cloud was pressing down on the city. Li Qitian stared at the dignified girl kneeling in front of him and helplessly rubbed his eyebrows. He sighed and said, "Helan, how long do you plan to kneel?" Anyang's eldest princess Li Helan looked up at Li Qitian and choked with sobs. She said with grievance, "Imperial brother, you didn't keep your word. When I was young, you said that when Lan grew up, she could marry Pang Zhishi and be his wife. Now, Imperial brother is the most honorable person in the world. You know what Lan wants, but you still betrothed Lan to Ji Lan. You know that Ji Lan and I don't like each other. How are we going to live in the future?" Li Helan was born dignified and beautiful. When she cried, she looked even more delicate and pitiful. Li Qitian had doted on his little sister since she was young. Li Helan was also very intelligent and knew when to advance and retreat. Therefore, the relationship between the siblings had always been good. Now that Li Helan cried, Li Qitian also felt distressed. "Get up. Zhen has already made a decision, so it cannot be changed. What's wrong with Ji Lan? He's beautiful and capable in both literature and martial arts. Isn't it perfect for him to be your son-in-law? But Lan doesn't like him. Imperial brother, can you dote on Lan once and not marry Lan to Ji Lan?" Chapter 313. Although Li Helan wasn't born a princess, her parents and brothers had treated her like a treasure and doted on her. Especially after Li Qitian's conquest of the world, with the financial support of the aristocratic families in Beiji and the wealth obtained from the war, Li Helan's life was no less than that of a princess. Therefore, Li Helan could get whatever she wanted since she was a child. Moreover, in her mind, Pang Xiao should have been hers. Since she was a child, her parents and brothers had said countless times that she would marry Pang Xiao when she grew up. Li Helan had admired Pang Xiao for a long time. She liked his arrogance and admired his wisdom and martial arts. She was now 16 years old, but she had waited 8 years to marry Pang Xiao when she grew up. It could be said that when she first met Pang Xiao when she was 8 years old and heard her mother's praise for him and the promise of betrothing her to Pang Xiao in the future, she had already taken it seriously. Since then, when Li Helan was growing up, marrying Pang Xiao had become her lifelong dream. A reality that had already become a foregone conclusion. Why did it change now? Why did her brother, who had always doted on her, refuse to support her after he gained supreme power in the world? Now, Li Qitian suddenly told her that Pang Xiao had someone else in love. Then, where should she place all her hopes on him after so many years? Li Helan's tears once again rolled down her beautiful face in large droplets, gathering at her chin and staining her lapel. Her peach-pink jacket was also dyed a deep red. Li Qitian looked at his sister, who looked as if she had been struck by lightning. He sighed and stood up, slowly walking to Li Helan and helping her up with both hands. "Helan, don't cry. You are my only sister, so I won't harm you. Although Jilan has a cold personality, he is a gentleman. He is not worse than Pang Zhishi. You will have a good life with Jilan. What's more, with Imperial Brother around, Jilan wouldn't dare to treat you badly. You can prepare for your marriage with peace of mind." Li Helan sobbed and looked up at Li Qitian with teary eyes. "Royal brother, Lan doesn't want to marry Jilan. Can Lan not marry?" Li Qitian's face darkened impatiently. He frowned and said, "Helan, you have to be obedient. You are not a village girl from the mountains. You should have learned the etiquette of everyone. You also know the 3 obedience and 4 virtues of a woman. Don't tell me you don't want to listen to Imperial Brother's words." Although Li Qitian didn't get angry at her, how could someone as smart as Li Helan not understand Li Qitian's meaning? It seemed that this marriage was a foregone conclusion. Regardless of whether it was out of obedience to her elder brother or out of obedience to the emperor, she had to marry Jilan. There was no turning back. No, perhaps, there was still a way out. What if Pang Zhishi was willing to marry her? If Pang Zhishi or Imperial Brother spoke up, there might still be a chance. Thinking of this, Li Helan cleverly didn't argue with Li Qitian. She knew her elder brother's personality well. She also knew that her elder brother was no longer the elder brother of the past. He had already become the ruler of a country. His words were like gold and jade and couldn't be disobeyed. If she wanted to live a happy life, the biggest thing she could rely on was her Imperial Brother's love. If she obeyed, she could still win her Imperial Brother's pity. If she disobeyed, she was afraid that he would lose his patience. Thinking of this, Li Helan wiped her tears with her sleeve and smiled at Li Qitian. She said hoarsely, "Lan will listen to Imperial Brother." She clearly felt wronged, but she smiled at him with tears in her eyes and softly said that she would listen to him. This touched the soft spot in Li Qitian's heart. She was so obedient and smiled to reassure him with tears in her eyes. This made Li Qitian feel even more pity for her. Li Qitian patted Li Helan's shoulder to comfort her and rewarded her with a lot of gold, silver, and jewelry. Only then did he let her return to the Palace of Peace and Tranquility to rest. Li Helan lived with the Empress Dowager in the Palace of Peace and Tranquility. After leaving the imperial study, she walked expressionlessly with her personal maid, Hexiang, all the way back to the side hall of the Palace of Peace and Tranquility. Li Helan angrily grabbed the golden hairpin on her head and threw it on the ground, stomping on it a few times. Hexiang hurriedly sent the palace servants away and carefully closed the door. At this time, Li Helan had already angrily rushed into the inner room. She grabbed a pillow and smashed it with force. Her expression was ferocious and she screamed silently. Her face was distorted like a crazy woman. She was so tired that she was gasping for breath. Then she slowly stopped and her tears surged again. Hexiang went forward with heartache and softly advised, "Princess Royal, you must take care of yourself. Don't wrong yourself." Li Helan sobbed. She covered her face and cried for a long time. Then she said, "No, this matter can't be let go. I have to find Pang Zhishi. I can't make Imperial Brother change his words. Pang Zhishi must have it. But what if Prince Zhongshuan doesn't agree? Doesn't agree? Will he?" Li Helan was stunned for a moment with tears in her eyes. Her eyes gradually became sharp. "Go and find out the origin of the woman that Prince Zhongshuan kidnapped in the hotel that day. I want to know all the rumors about them, no matter how big or small." "Yes. This servant will give the order." Hexiang immediately became serious. She bowed and left to make arrangements. An ordinary-looking palace servant who had been observing outside the Palace of Peace and Tranquility for a long time quietly went to the imperial study. Qin Yining had been very relaxed these 2 days. Although the Yao clan's words were a bit harsh when they first met, Qin Yining found that the Yao clan didn't have any hostility towards her. On the contrary, they might even like her very much. The Yao clan was an intelligent and gentle woman. Often, the gentleness in her words could make people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. When getting along with the Yao clan, it was as if there was no psychological pressure. They were like warm spring water that made people feel comfortable both physically and mentally. Madame Ma had a straightforward personality. Usually, when she had nothing to do, she would order her servant to invite Qin Yining. The Yao clan would often accompany Qin Yining to accompany Madame Ma to talk. When Madame Ma was young, she wandered the Jianghu and was experienced and knowledgeable. She would often tell Qin Yining some of her experiences. Qin Yining could often put forward unique opinions and asked questions that were on point. This made Madame Ma like her even more. She often chatted with her until dinner. Even after dinner, she didn't want to let her go. "Mother, you forgot again. Sister Yi still has to go back to the Shui Garden. Otherwise, what if people gossip?" The Yao clan took the cloak from the servant and put it on Qin Yining. Qin Yining hurriedly thanked them. She cooperatively raised her chin and let the Yao clan help her tie the ribbon on her collar. Madame Ma sighed and said, "It's really helpless. Now our house is too big. It's better to squeeze together as a family from before. It's also convenient to talk in daily life. We can also be intimate with each other. There aren't so many rules." The Yao clan laughed when they heard this. In the past, our Dai Fu didn't have such a high official position. Sister Yi is already in the capital. "Mother, are you still afraid that Sister Yi won't be there in the future?" These words made Madame Ma laugh heartily. Qin Yining's cheeks burned red. She hurriedly bowed and left. Seeing Qin Yining run away in embarrassment, Madame Ma and the Yao clan looked at each other and couldn't help but find it funny. The more we interact with this child, the more we like her. That's right. If she can really enter our family, it will be the Dai Fu's good fortune. While the mother and daughter were talking, Qin Yining had already called Lian Xiaozhou, who was playing in the courtyard just now. The two of them carried lanterns and headed towards the Shui Garden. Chapter 314. One of the two women was wearing a red cloak with a white fur collar. She was tall and beautiful. The other was wearing a silver fox fur vest paired with a light green cotton skirt. She was holding a delicate stove the size of an apple, which made her look very cute. Both of them were around 17 or 18 years old. They were accompanied by maidservants and grannies. Qin Yining stopped and looked at the group of people. She didn't need to think to know that there were no other young beauties in Prince Zhongshuan's residence other than the beautiful concubines that Your Majesty had bestowed upon Pang Shao. Qin Yining didn't want to have anything to do with these people. Even if they might live under the same roof in the future, that was a matter for the future. There was no need to rush to get to know them. Therefore, she only nodded slightly to the two women and walked around them with Lian Xiaozhou. The tall and beautiful young girl stared at Qin Yining with her watery eyes. She narrowed her eyes and didn't hide her hostility. Qin Yining could tell that the two women were deliberately blocking her way to cause trouble. The moment the two passed by, the beautiful young girl spat at Qin Yining. "Pay! Slut! You're shameless to seduce Wang Yi." Qin Yining looked at the spit on her skirt and looked at the beautiful young girl in astonishment. The cute young girl in green didn't expect this to happen and hurriedly said, "Ro Nyang, don't cause trouble." "What do you know?" Ro Nyang sneered and said, "If you don't dare, then go back. No one told you to follow me." The maidservant at the side supported the young girl in green and said, "Miss Xincha, let's go back." Ro Nyang glanced at Xincha, her eyes full of ridicule. Qin Yining grabbed Lian Xiaozhou's hand to prevent her from being impulsive and sneered, "Miss Ro Nyang, right? That's me. What about it? Lick it clean." Qin Yining pointed at the spit on her skirt. Ro Nyang looked at Qin Yining in astonishment for a moment and suddenly laughed mockingly. "If I spit on your face, would you ask me to lick it clean? If I did that, do you think you'd still be alive?" "Bullshit!" Ro Nyang roared angrily, "Who do you think you are? You're just a bitch picked up by Wang Yi. In the future, Wang Yi will definitely kill your whole family, including you. You can only use your face to beg Wang Yi. You dare to be so arrogant in front of us sisters. You're embarrassing Wang Yi and tarnishing Your Majesty's grace." Xincha's persuasion sounded gentle, but in fact, every word and sentence was telling Qin Yining that they were concubines bestowed by the emperor to Pang Shao. Their status was noble, and they were naturally different from a lowly woman like her, who was forcibly taken into the family. This was reminding her to behave herself. It seemed that Miss Xincha was more than one level smarter than Ro Nyang. Qin Yining couldn't help but feel a little funny. She hadn't even entered the concubine's house yet, but the concubines were already furious. They actually blocked her way to give her a show of strength. It was all thanks to Pang Zhao's acting outside that this scene happened. As soon as she thought of this, Qin Yining suddenly had a flash of light in her mind. Then she grabbed Ro Nyang's collar vigorously, pushed her violently to the ground, and put the spit on her skirt to Ro Nyang's mouth. "Lick it clean for me." Ro Nyang and the other 10 concubines were beauties that Li Qitian specially found from the common people to train for several years. They hoped that they could play a big role in the future. Therefore, these 10 concubines lived like princes in addition to learning how to serve men. Almost no one dared to treat them like this. Now they were treated so rudely by Qin Yining. How could they be as calm as before? Ro Nyang shouted in shock and anger, "Let me go. Vicious whore. Bitch. When Wang Yi comes back, he will definitely punish you severely." "You bitch. Punish. Then let him punish me however he wants. I'm already like this now. What's there to be afraid of? I'm born in a big family. Now even people like you dare to bully me. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Qin Yining grabbed Ro Nyang's hair and pressed her to the ground while scolding her. He didn't care whether her struggling hands would catch him or not. Seeing that they were about to fight, Xinsha hurriedly ordered the maids and older female concubines to take sides. Lian Xiaozhou didn't care about the rules that Qin Yining taught her at this time. Like a kitten that had been provoked, she suddenly rushed forward and threw the maids and older female concubines to the ground one by one. These women fell to the ground and cried out, "Ouch!" and "Mother." Even Miss Xinsha was pushed back 2 steps and fell to the ground by Lian Xiaozhou. The apple-sized hand warmer also fell to the ground and the charcoal scattered all over the ground. Ronyang's face was pressed to the ground, her back was stepped on by Qin Yining. She screamed and cried loudly. The maids and older female concubines who got up and came over were slapped by Qin Yining. They were dizzy and fell to the ground. Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou overturned 7 or 8 maids and older female concubines brought by Xinsha and Ronyang. The place was in chaos and screaming. Madame Ma and Yao Clan, who were in the Pine Crane Hall not far away, hurriedly put on their cotton-padded clothes and rushed out to check. Madame Ma and Yao Clan were stunned when they saw Qin Yining stepping on a battered and exhausted beauty and lifting a servant girl by the collar and throwing her to the side like a female general with infinite strength. Heavens, was this still the intelligent and gentle young lady from a respectable family they knew? The chaos here also alarmed the people in front of the Chuehua gate. Pang Xiao and Yao Qinggu quickly walked in and saw that Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou, one tall and one short, were the only ones standing in this open space. The rest of the people were either sitting or lying on the ground. They couldn't react for a while. What's going on? Yao Qinggu couldn't help but ask. When Ronyang heard the sound, she hurriedly cried and said, "Wang Yi, save me. This crazy hoof wants to kill people." Qin Yining stomped his foot hard and said, "If you dare to scold me again, I'll kill you." Ah! Ronyang's voice was hoarse from being stepped on. She was exhaling more than she was inhaling, and her eyes rolled back. Mrs. Ma's eyes were sparkling as she watched, and her heart was already overjoyed. She had long disliked the 10 pretentious people, but she didn't expect to be so domineering and beat them down so easily. She was indeed the person that her precious grandson had taken a liking to. Yao Clan, on the other hand, looked at Qin Yining's female bandit appearance thoughtfully. Yao Qinggu and Pang Xiao looked at each other after recovering from the shock. They showed the same expression as Yao Clan and understood a little. Pang Xiao suppressed his laughter and coughed before reprimanding with a stern face, "What are you doing? This is this king's mansion, how can you behave so atrociously? Let go of me." Qin Yining trembled and looked at Pang Xiao in disbelief. His voice trembled but he stubbornly said, "She was the one who started it first. She spat on me and even insulted me. Chapter 315. Qin Yining seemed to be shocked by Pang Xiao's anger. His watery eyes sparkled and reflected the light of the lanterns in the night, making him look pitiful. Ronyang noticed that Qin Yining had loosened his grip on her foot and immediately got up. She didn't dare to fight back against Qin Yining in public, but she didn't hide the ridicule in her eyes when she looked at Qin Yining. "Sister Ronyang, are you okay?" Xinsha limped over to support Ronyang and turned back to look at Pang Xiao gratefully. His eyes seemed to say that if he hadn't come, they would have been killed by the female devil today. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining had a natural tacit understanding. Although they knew what each other was thinking at this time, when he saw Qin Yining like this, he still felt a burst of heartache. He endured it and continued to reprimand, "Why are you staring at me? Do you dare to disagree with this king's words?" The tears in Qin Yining's eyes were like the snow on the branches and fell down with this roar. Lian Xiaozhou was so angry that she roared and rushed to Pang Xiao, punching and kicking him. She was small in stature. Compared to Pang Xiao, her arms and legs were even shorter. In addition, although her heart was filled with thoughts, her speech was not fluent. She wanted to curse, but she was unable to do so. She was so anxious that she cried out intermittently, "You bullied Jijie. Bad guy. Bad guy." Qin Yining felt distressed when he saw Lian Xiaozhou so protective of him. He hurriedly pulled Lian Xiaozhou away from Pang Zhao's legs, held her in his arms, and hugged her apologetically to comfort her. Pang Zhao was punched a few times by the little girl and saw Qin Yining hugging the child and crying. Although he knew that all this was done for the eyes of others, his heart still throbbed with pain. Crying. "You dare to behave atrociously in this king's mansion and still have the face to cry. Do you think this king will spare you because of your tears?" Qin Yining squatted on the ground and hugged Lian Xiaozhou. He buried his face in Lian Xiaozhou's shoulder, and his shoulders trembled slightly. Lian Xiaozhou wanted to scold Pang Zhao, but she couldn't. She wanted to hit her, but she knew that she couldn't win. Seeing Qin Yining like this, she also burst into tears. Madame Ma, who had been stunned for a long time, finally regained her senses. Seeing that Pang Zhao had bullied Qin Yining so pitifully, although she was puzzled as to why he suddenly changed his attitude, her love for Qin Yining was real. She immediately wanted to rush forward to stand up for Qin Yining. Yao Clan and Yao Qinggu, who had unknowingly walked to Madame Ma's side, pulled her back in time. Yao Qinggu pinched her arm suggestively. There was naturally a tacit understanding between an old married couple. Madame Ma turned back and saw Yao Qinggu's gaze. She hesitated and didn't move. Pang Zhao had already said in a deep voice, "Come, take her back to Trace Snow Garden and lock her up. Without this king's orders, no one is allowed to let her out, and no one is allowed to visit her." "Yes." A female servant immediately responded and came forward to help Qin Yining up. She also pulled Lian Xiaozhou up. She was held on both sides as if she was afraid that she would run away, so she was escorted away. Pang Zhao frowned and stood with his hands behind his back. He coldly watched as Qin Yining was taken away. It wasn't until his figure disappeared around the corner that he turned back to look coldly at Ronyang. "Why are you here?" At this time, Ronyang's hair was messy and she was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. She looked really pitiful. When she heard Pang Zhao's question, she timidly looked up. Unexpectedly, she met Pang Zhao's sharp narrowed eyes. She immediately felt as if someone had stabbed her heart with an ice arrow. She was so scared that she lowered her head and trembled. Replying to Wang Yi, "I just came out for a walk. It's already dark. You came out to enjoy the night scenery." Pang Zhao raised his eyebrows. His voice was slow and gentle. However, the oppression in his voice made the servants on the side keep quiet out of fear. Facing Pang Zhao, Ronyang was already trembling like a sieve. She couldn't spit out half a word. Seeing this, Xinche could only bite the bullet and say, replying to Wang Yi, "It's true. Sister Ronyang said that she wanted to take a walk after dinner, so we came out for a walk. Unexpectedly, we met Miss Qin." "Did she ask you?" Xinche was stunned. "What? Did this king ask you?" Pang Zhao squinted at Xinche. His expression seemed to have seen through all the thoughts in Xinche's mind. Xinche was scared and ashamed. She lowered her head in panic. Pang Zhao said coldly, "Since you are the people bestowed by your majesty, you should think more before you do things. Don't lose your dignity. Don't think that because your majesty bestowed you to this king, you are superior to others in the mansion. If this king finds that you don't abide by your duties and commit outrages, this king can send your corpses back to your majesty. If you don't believe me, you can try." "Yes, I don't dare. I don't dare." Ronyang's voice trembled so much that it didn't sound like a human's voice. Pang Zhao waved his hand. Ronyang and Xinche immediately ran away with their personal maids as if they had been pardoned. When peace was restored, Pang Xiao turned around and walked towards the pine crane hole. Mrs. Ma wanted to ask, but was pulled back by Yao Qinggu. Everyone entered the room in silence. After instructing someone to guard outside and making sure that no one was approaching, Pang Xiao said, "You scared Grandpa, Grandma, and Mother just now, right? That's my fault." Mrs. Ma anxiously lowered her voice and said, "What were you doing just now? You actually had red eyebrows and green eyes in front of EE. How awe-inspiring can you be when you're using force on a woman? You've really lived for more than 20 years in a dog's stomach. Have you forgotten the principles that your grandmother taught you?" Seeing EE crying like that, even if you don't feel sorry for her, I do. "Mother, don't get agitated. Dai Fu did it on purpose." Yao Qinggu held Mrs. Ma's hand, feeling a little helpless against his impulsive mother. Mrs. Ma said, "Even if you did it on purpose, you still made Sister E cry." "Yes, Grandma." Pang Xiao recalled his Qin Yining appearance just now and felt a wave of sadness in his heart. "I pretended to snatch Sister E into the family outside in order to protect the family Qin's future. Now that Sister E has entered the family, if my attitude towards her is different from what I did that day, I'm afraid there will be a lot of speculations if outsiders hear about it. The 10 women bestowed by Your Majesty are usually quite dutiful. Sister E hasn't come out to greet us for so many days, but she suddenly came out today. There must be something fishy about it, so I deliberately put on a show with Sister E in order to deceive the eyes of the people in our family." Mrs. Ma was not stupid. She understood everything as soon as Pang Xiao said it. She frowned and thought for a moment, then finally punched the Kong a few times. "I'm so aggrieved. I can't live freely in my own family." Wasn't it aggrieved? How could Pang Xiao not feel aggrieved? But now that the situation was forced, even if he was aggrieved, he had to continue living his life. "Dai Fu, secretly go and see Miss Qin later and comfort her a little. Don't make her feel uncomfortable. That girl is unlucky to be involved with you." Yao Qinggu took out his tobacco pipe and stuffed it into the pot with his rough hands. Pang Xiao's eyebrows twitched when he heard this, and he said indignantly, "Grandfather, what are you saying? Am I not good enough to her? Don't be indignant. Back then, what did I want when I followed your grandfather? Wasn't it because your grandfather was a dutiful person? How could he give me a peaceful life if he knew his place? You, on the other hand, don't rest all day. You're either fighting outside and not at home, or you're hanging your head on your belt when you're home. Who is your wife? She has to worry about you to death, and if she's not careful, she'll be implicated by you. You say that you're good enough to her, but doesn't she have to help you plan and put on a show? Even if I don't blame you, it's tiring enough for Lassie to be with you." Mrs. Ma's scolding struck a chord in Pang Xiao's heart. Even if others didn't say it out loud, he also felt the same way. His situation was indeed difficult, and Qin Yining had no choice but to go through the difficulties with him. He could only promise her his unwavering sincerity, but he couldn't promise her absolute stability. What did a woman want? Even a heroine like her grandmother, who ventured into the pugilistic world when she was young, would rather marry a chef in the end for a stable life. Qin Yining had been lonely since she was a child. She wouldn't like to live a challenging life, would she? Pang Xiao faced his shortcomings for the first time after being scolded. Although he had thousands of good points, this one shortcoming was enough to give Qin Yining a reason not to be with him. Seeing Pang Xiao's dark face and his expression as if he was about to bite someone, Mrs. Ma was also angered. She glared at him and was about to take off her shoes. "What? You're still not convinced? Believe it or not, I'll beat you to death with the sole of my shoe." Hey, hey. Mother. When the Yao clan saw Mrs. Ma taking off her shoes, they hurriedly reached out to pull her back. Mrs. Ma didn't have her feet bound. She had a pair of big feet. The soles of her shoes were hand-sewn by the women. They were hard and thick, and could leave a red mark on a person's body. After all, the Yao clan loved their son dearly. How could they bear to let him be beaten? Yao Qinggu had already lit a cigarette. He smacked his lips with a smile and looked like he was watching the show from the sidelines. Pang Xiao obediently let Mrs. Ma hit him twice with the sole of her shoe. Then, he said helplessly, "Grandmother, calm down. I'll sit here for a while. Later, I'll avoid people and go to see Sister Yi. Is that okay?" "Yes. That's more like it." Mrs. Ma's temper came and went quickly. Seeing that Pang Xiao was so big and was Wang Yi, and he was still as obedient as when he was a child, she felt very comforted. Thinking about it carefully, she couldn't blame him for what happened outside. She secretly cursed the treacherous emperor in her heart. When Li Qitian heard the spy report the details of what happened in Pang Zhao's residence, he asked, "In your opinion, Prince Zhongshuan really doesn't care about the family Qin girl?" The spy was dressed in black. She had a delicate figure and her face was wrapped in a black cloth. Her voice was female. "Replying to your majesty, in my opinion, Prince Zhongshuan also likes the family Qin girl. That woman was born with a heavenly beauty that could cause the downfall of cities and countries. It's understandable that heroes find it hard to resist the charms of beauties. However, in Prince Zhongshuan's heart, the hatred for his father should be heavier. Otherwise, he wouldn't love and hate the daughter of the Qin family." "Yes." Li Qitian paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. After carefully analyzing for a moment, he finally relaxed and smiled. "I know that a person like him can't let go of the hatred for his father. You did a good job. Thank you for your majesty's praise. It's my duty. There's one more thing. In the past 2 days, Princess Royal of Anyang has visited Prince Zhongshuan in the mansion for 2 consecutive days. Prince Zhongshuan was not in the mansion the first time. The second time, he deliberately avoided her. Today, Princess Royal of Anyang returned with disappointment and anger." Li Qitian nodded mysteriously and said, "I see. You continue to do your own thing." Chapter 316. Li Qitian stared blankly at a coral bonsai in the corner of the inner hall for a moment. His eyes were filled with a struggle of emotions. After staring blankly for a full hour, his expression finally changed from hesitation to determination. "Li Guanwen. This servant is here." Li Guanwen, who had been standing in the shadows in the corner, immediately stepped forward and saluted. Li Qitian's voice echoed in the spacious hall, "Go to the palace of Compassionate and Peaceful. Give Helan some fashionable clothes. Tell He Xiang to serve her master well and not be distracted. If Zhen finds out, Zhen won't forgive her." "Yes. This servant will go immediately." "Your Majesty, are you going to flip the tiles tonight?" Li Guanwen thought for a moment, then said, "Zhen will go see the Empress." Qin Yining's life had become more and more peaceful in recent days. Ever since she coincidentally met the 2 concubines that day and was angrily reprimanded by Pang Xiao, she was grounded. The scenery in Tu Shui Garden was pleasant, and the people who served her were all trusted aides arranged by Pang Xiao. She only brought Lian Xiaozhou with her and lived with her. When she was free, she would teach Lian Xiaozhou some things. For example, she would try her best to ask Lian Xiaozhou some questions so that she could practice answering. Another example would be teaching Lian Xiaozhou some common sense and rules of the world, or teaching her the art of tea and cooking. In short, whenever Qin Yining encountered something that Lian Xiaozhou didn't know, she would patiently explain it to her. Today, After lunch, Qin Yining was bored when he heard a few dog barks. One of the barks was deep and the other was soft. Hearing the soft barks, he knew it was Big White. The other one was unfamiliar, but he didn't know where it came from. Lian Xiaozhou heard the barks and jumped up in joy. "Sister, a dog." She ran out as she spoke. There was a dog hole in the wall of Tu Shui Garden's backyard. The Yao clan's Pekingese, Big White, often came in to play. Qin Yining chased after her and helped her put on a cotton cloak. "Slow down, don't fall." Her head maidservant, Xian Yun, smiled and said, "Miss really treats Miss Lian like her own younger sister." Xian Yun had a delicate figure and a beautiful face. Like Ji Yun, she was Pang Xiao's trusted aide and was trustworthy. Ji Yun's martial arts skills were outstanding. That day, Pang Xiao gave Ji Yun to Qin Yining, intending to protect her closely. Xian Yun didn't know martial arts, but she was cautious and intelligent. She was also very knowledgeable in tea ceremony, cooking, and needlework. She was also very good at managing the maids in the courtyard. She almost didn't need Qin Yining to say anything and she could handle everything properly. She was very clever and sensible. Now that they were living in the prince's mansion, Pang Xiao gave Xianyun to Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Little Kanji saved my life. If I hadn't met her in the mountains that day, I would have frozen or starved to death." This child's father had just died, and she had no one to rely on in the mountains. She's clearly 10 years old, but she still looks like a child. I thought that as long as I could come out alive, I would definitely bring her along to repay her kindness. Now that I have the opportunity, I naturally have to do my best to take care of her. She was afraid that Pang Xiao would find out, so she kept telling Lian Xiaozhou to say that she was 1 year older. Miss Lian is a very emotional person. No wonder Wang Yi only has Miss Lian in his heart. Xian Yun fetched a white fox fur cloak and put it on Qin Yining. She also took out a hand basket wrapped in white rabbit fur and cotton wool and handed it to Qin Yining. Miss Lian grew up in the south, so you definitely won't be able to adapt to the northern winter immediately. You should wear more clothes before going out. If you catch a cold, Wang Yi will definitely be distressed. Thank you very much. Qin Yining smiled and put her hands into the hand basket. Sure enough, it was soft and warm inside. It seemed that she had been drying it on the Kong just now, waiting for Qin Yining to use it when her hands were cold. Qin Yining walked to the door, and Xian Yun lifted the warm curtain for her. The cold wind blew against her face. The snow in the courtyard was extremely clean, and only the top of the wall and the branches occasionally had snow rustling down. Lian Xiaozhou, who was wearing a red coat, was holding a snow-white Pekingese in her arms. She was squatting on the ground and staring blankly at a big black dog that was baring its teeth not far away. Qin Yining was also stunned for a moment. She asked Xian Yun, "That's Big Black. I heard that it's already 10 years old. It used to be raised by the old master's family. It's very good at guarding the house and is very smart. It can understand human language." Qin Yining laughed, "So, Big Black and Little Kanji are the same age." Xian Yun looked at the big black dog with well-proportioned muscles and then looked at the little girl in the red coat who was squatting on the ground. She couldn't help but laugh. Qin Yining walked down the stairs. Thinking that this big black dog was luckier than her and had actually seen the young Pang Jishi, she couldn't help but smile and bend down to tease it. Big Black. Big Black immediately looked over. Its ears twitched, and its tail wavered hesitantly. It also stopped baring its teeth. Lian Xiaozhou heard Qin Yining's voice and ran over with the little Pekingese in her arms. Her eyes were shining. Big dog. Yes, it's a big dog. Little Kanji, do you like it? Lian Xiaozhou nodded repeatedly. Yes, I like it. Roast it. Qin Yining almost fell over. No wonder the smart and intelligent Big Black would bare its teeth at Lian Xiaozhou. This little girl actually wanted to roast it. Lian Xiaozhou had lived in the mountains for so many years, and the food she ate was mainly roasted. Therefore, she had a great interest in roasted meat. Yesterday, she had even caught sparrows to roast in Su Shui garden. Even though she was full now, she still couldn't help but want to roast it. Qin Yining tapped her forehead and said, "No, don't we have food now? There are all kinds of delicious food. Isn't that enough for you? Big Black has an owner. You can't roast it. Do you understand?" Lian Xiaozhou frowned and nodded sadly. She understood everything and was extremely smart. However, she still didn't make any progress in speaking and was still very clumsy. However, her biggest strength was that she was obedient and only listened to Qin Yining. When Qin Yining said that she couldn't eat roasted Big Black, she stopped thinking about it. Perhaps because the little girl no longer coveted Big Black couldn't sense her malice. It raised its head and stood in place, barked twice, and wagged its tail. Qin Yining stroked Big Black's head and scratched its chin to make Big Black itchy. Big Black barked a few times and made happy sounds in its throat. It wagged its tail and simply lay on the ground with its paws, exposing its belly. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect the legendary Big Black to be so close to people. Big White, who was in Lian Xiaozhou's arms, twisted its small body and jumped down to the ground. It also circled around Qin Yining's feet. Qin Yining handed the cage to Xian Yun and took the time to stroke it. The small animal's body was soft and warm. Its furry skin was very comfortable to the touch. Qin Yining couldn't help but stroke it a few more times. He felt that the knot in his heart had been lifted. "You're gentler to them than you are to me. I'm really jealous." Suddenly, Peng Zhao's magnetic and smiling voice came from above him. Qin Yining looked up and saw Peng Zhao standing in front of him with her hands behind her back. Big Black and Big White both turned over and got up. One black and one white, one big and one small, crazily wagged their tails and swayed their butts. They circled around Peng Zhao's feet, obviously trying to get close to her. Qin Yining stood up. Xian Yun immediately handed her a hot handkerchief to wipe her hands and put the cage on Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Why didn't you go out today?" "I went out for a while and just came back. I have 2 news for you." Chapter 317. What's the news? Qin Yining walked to Peng Zhao in confusion. Peng Zhao stretched out his long arm and put it around her shoulder. As they walked into the room, he said, "Sui Jinwei angered your majesty yesterday. Your majesty ordered him to be beaten 30 times. Then, he was stripped of all his official positions. Now, he's idle at home." Qin Yining laughed and didn't comment. She had already expected that Sui Jinwei's outcome would not be good. After all, Emperor Zhou was a suspicious person. Sui Jinwei's report was contradictory, and it caused Emperor Zhou to set up such a large formation in front of the city gates. The conflict that was originally hidden in the dark was suddenly brought to light. Zhou Di was a shrewd man, but this time, he was exposed and lost face. How could he tolerate Sui Jinwei's presence? Even if Sui Jinwei was extremely talented, Emperor Zhou's suspicion of him would cause him to lose his future. Peng Zhao saw that she wasn't surprised at all. He praised and liked her in his heart. He scratched her nose with his index finger and said dotingly, "Your reaction is so calm that I don't feel any sense of accomplishment. When we just came from the study, Mr. Su, Mr. Xia, and the others praised you as a half-immortal who could foresee things. I was proud of it, but I didn't want to show off in front of them. I could only endure it. Who knew that when it came to you, you didn't give me a chance to be proud at all? It's really strange. This is something that was bound to happen. What's there to be happy about? Pang Xiao waved his hand and dismissed Xian Yun and the others. He pressed her shoulder and let her sit on the warm Kong by the window. He bent over to look at her bright little face and kissed her forehead. In short, I'm very happy. It's not only because of the position of the commander of the Tiger Army, but also because my sister Yi is so powerful. You don't know how much they admire you now. I knew that my sister Yi had the ability to subdue those people. You're so good. Even if they have prejudice against you, they will like you after interacting with you. Qin Yining's face heated up. She gently pushed his shoulder. All right, if you're so proud, they will laugh at you. Joke. They can't wait to be jealous. Pang Xiao sat down next to her. That's one thing. Didn't you say there was one more thing? Yes. Pang Xiao said, Your Majesty's men have brought back the scattered Dain troops. They should be able to enter the capital tomorrow. My parents have been found. Qin Yining stood up in surprise. Pang Xiao put his arm around her shoulder and asked her to sit down. He comforted her and said, This is what I want to talk to you about. Your family members are all there, but I didn't see your father, mother, and concubine mother in that group. Qin Yining felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood there in a daze for a moment. He carefully covered her with a blanket. She must be very worried, right? She was so worried that she was using sleep to escape reality. Pang Xiao caressed her face with heartache. He then sat to the side, admiring her sleeping face while thinking about the current affairs of the imperial court. Right at this time, a soft call came from outside the door. Wang Yi. Pang Xiao immediately got up and tiptoed outside. He carefully closed the door before asking softly, What is it? Xian Yun bowed and said softly, The people outside said that Marquis Dingbei's Fu sent an invitation and asked you to go take a look. When Pang Xiao heard the words, Marquis Dingbei, he was stunned for a moment. He then ordered Xian Yun to serve Qin Yining well and strode outside. Ji Ziyu sent an invitation to Pang Xiao, inviting him to go out for a walk and drink wine tomorrow. After Ji Ziyu returned to the capital to apologize, Eve proposed to Anyang Princess Royal. Your Majesty agreed and ordered Ji Ziyu to stay in the capital to complete the marriage while Tayton was in chaos and the borders were stable. Ji Ziyu finally had the chance to stay and drink wine with Pang Xiao, who was idle at home. Pang Xiao ordered someone to tell Ji Ziyu that he would definitely be there on time tomorrow. He thought for a moment and then went to the study in the outer courtyard to gather his advisors for a discussion. The next morning, Pang Xiao left with Huzi and several guards. After Qin Yining slept, she had calmed down. She had thought things through. Now that things had come to this, she could only deal with whatever came her way. Worrying about things that hadn't happened yet was groundless. Worrying about things that had already happened was useless. She might as well focus on the present. Qin Yining called Lian Xiaozhou in and said with a smile, While we are free, I will teach you a few more words. At the same time, a luxurious carriage slowly stopped in front of Prince Zhongshuan's Fu. A few pale-faced servants dressed as attendants lifted the curtain. The head palace maid Hexiang carefully helped Anyang Princess Royal off the carriage. Chapter 318. The servant nodded and trotted forward to knock on the door. Not long after, a doorman answered and opened the door. When he saw who it was, he hurriedly came forward and bowed politely. This humble one pays his respects to Princess Royal. Li Helan slightly raised her chin and raised her long and narrow eyes slightly. She looked at the gilded plaque of Prince Zhongshuan's mansion on the lintel and asked softly without looking sideways, "Pass a message to Wang Yi that I'm here." The doorman bowed and said, "Princess Royal, our Wang Yi is not in the mansion." "Not in?" Li Helan's voice was neither fast nor slow. No one could tell whether she was happy or angry, but her majestic aura could not be ignored. The doorman lowered his head and knelt on the ground, saying, "Wang Yi said that he went to keep an appointment and left early in the morning." "Appointment? Whose appointment?" Li Helan glanced at the doorman. The doorman said, "How would this humble one know about such things?" Li Helan slightly raised the corners of her mouth and said, "Then I'll gradually meet old madam and old madam." As she spoke, she walked inside. The doorman did not dare to stop her. He only complained inwardly and hurriedly chased after her. At this time, Su Weiji had already received the news. After thinking for a while, she simply came out to greet Li Helan and bowed, "Greetings to Princess Royal." Li Helan saw that the person who stopped her was an elder with a scholarly appearance. She guessed that this person was most likely the steward of the mansion. A smile appeared on her beautiful face and her voice was gentle as she said, "No need for formalities. I heard that your Wang Yi is not in the mansion. I've been here twice and haven't been able to see him. Today, I can only disturb the elders in the mansion." Su Weiji discreetly sized up Li Helan's expression, then quickly lowered her eyes and said, "Yes, it's really unfortunate today. Wang Yi has an appointment with a friend outside. Old Master, Old Madam, and Old Madam are also very bored these days and went out early in the morning. The masters in the mansion are not at home. Ever since the news of Anyang Princess Royal's marriage with Ji Ziyu spread, she had visited twice. Considering the past and Anyang's feelings for Pang Xiao, it was easy to guess why she came. Wang Yi avoided her and had no reason to let her see the elders. Princess Royal had a noble status. When Old Master, Old Madam, and Old Madam saw her, did they have to kneel down and kowtow to listen to her lecture? Su Weiji didn't dare to make the old man feel awkward, so he might as well not see him. Hearing this, Li Helan's face flushed red with anger. Not at home. They are not at home. Are they really not at home or are they hiding from me? Su Weiji politely bowed with a smile on her face, "Princess Royal, please forgive me. I didn't know you were coming today. It just so happens that the masters are not at home." She hinted that the Princess Royal didn't even send an invitation when she came and just came to block her. Li Helan was ashamed and angry. She was so angry that she almost turned around and left. She wanted to send an invitation, but she knew Pang Zhao's personality. She would avoid her even more if she saw an invitation. She could only meet her if she made a surprise attack. Could it be that Pang Zhao cared about her face? Thinking that she was already engaged to Ji Ziyu, she didn't care about the past between them. Thinking about Pang Zhao's personality, Li Helan felt that this was very likely. But the more Pang Zhao avoided her, the more she wanted to see her. It didn't make sense that she, the Princess Royal, would be blocked outside the door several times. Moreover, according to her analysis, the Old Master and Old Madam might still be at home. They just didn't want to see her. Li Helan took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. Her voice was neither high nor low, neither fast nor slow. She gently said, "That's right. This princess came a bit too suddenly. Since there are no masters at home, this princess will see the servants. I heard that the woman Wang Yi kidnapped that day is still at home. Call her out. This princess wants to see her." While speaking, Li Helan slowly walked to the main hall. She treated this place as if it was her own palace. Su Weiji followed behind with her head lowered. Her eyebrows twitched. As the saying goes, once or twice, but not thrice. The Princess Royal had already been rejected twice. This time, it really wasn't good to drive her out. Moreover, she didn't see Wang Yi, old madam, or the old madam when she came today. If she didn't even see Miss Qin, she would most likely explode on the spot. At that time, she really didn't know what would happen and how to deal with it. If this matter spread, it wouldn't be pleasant to hear. Su Weiji thought of the resourceful Miss Qin and inexplicably felt a bit more confident. With her intelligence, she shouldn't be at a disadvantage. Thinking of this, Su Weiji smiled and said, "Yes, this humble one will immediately send someone to invite Miss Qin here." Li Helan sat at the head of the table. She took the teacup brought by the servant and her hands paused for a moment. She said, "Call her," but Su Weiji said, "Invite her." Could it be that this woman had a high status in the residence? Li Helan thought so, so she directly asked. Su Weiji hurriedly bowed and said, replying to the Princess Royal, "This Miss Qin was confined in Su Shui Garden by Wang Yi a few days ago. No one was allowed to come in contact with her. This humble one guesses that Wang Yi might have his own plans." Li Helan understood and nodded, but her heart ached. It seemed that the news that He Xiang found out was true. This Miss Qin was as beautiful as a fairy and made Pang Xiao dizzy. He wanted to marry her, but she was the daughter of the enemy who killed his father. He loved her dearly and couldn't bear to kill her. He really loved and hated her, spoiled and abused her. His feelings were really complicated. Such strong and complicated feelings, but they weren't for her. Li Helan took a sip of tea and looked at the teacup in her hand with a smile. In fact, she was ready. When Qin Yining learned that the Princess Royal of Anyang came and Pang Xiao wasn't at home and asked to see her, he immediately ordered Xianyun, immediately send someone to Pine Crane Hall and tell old master, old madam, and old madam to hide and not come out, so that they won't be embarrassed when they see the Princess Royal. Just now, Mr. Su has asked someone to send a message to Pine Crane Hall. Now the gate of Pine Crane Hall is closed, and even Dahe and Whitey are tied up. Xianyun admired Qin Yining very much. That's good. Qin Yining looked at the pearls and emeralds in her hair as she said, fortunately, we have the resourceful Mr. Su and Mr. Xia and the Fu. When the prince is not here, there are still people who can take charge. Yes, but after you get married, it should be you who guard the mansion. Seeing that Qin Yining untied her hair, Xianyun hurriedly took a comb to comb her hair. Qin Yining blushed at her teasing. She ordered, tell them to find the clothes I wore when I returned to the city. Also, make my hair simple. I don't want any jewelry or ornaments. And use the cloak I wore when I came here. Xianyun was a smart person. She understood that Qin Yining was afraid of being noticed in front of Princess Royal of Anyang, so she immediately ordered people to do it. Qin Yining combed her hair again and put on the plain dress and the cotton cloak with the collar of white fox fur. Her hair was loosely tied into a bun. She didn't wear any jewelry or makeup and went out without any makeup. Xianyun wanted to follow her, but Qin Yining thought for a moment and said, I don't want you to. You'll be recognized. Just find 2 loyal and tall women to follow me. You're so thoughtful, Mississippi, otherwise, you wouldn't look like a surveillance. As she said this, she called 2 women who were over 40 years old and had sturdy figures. The 2 women followed Qin Yining to the front hall as if they were escorting a criminal. At this time, Li Helan had already eaten a bowl of tea and was looking at the door, ready to fight. Li Helan couldn't help but sit up straight when she heard the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer. Someone lifted the bamboo curtain outside the door, and an old woman wearing an ochre coat came in. She leaned sideways to hold the heavy curtain for the person behind her. The first thing that came into view was a light green dress. Then, he saw a beauty draped in a snow-white fox fur coat, without any makeup, slowly walk in. Li Helan's pupils shrank. She thought she was beautiful, but now she had lost. It was just as He Xiang had heard. That cheap wench was very outstanding. If there was a woman in this dynasty who was more beautiful than her, there might be one in the common folk. However, Li Helan often attended gatherings between nobles and nobles, but she had never seen anyone who could compare to her. If the men in this dynasty were included, Ji Ziyu could compare to her in terms of facial features. This was a woman that people couldn't help but look at a few more times. She was reluctant to look away. Her actions were generous and gentle, but she was naturally charming. The jealousy in Li Helan's heart was about to burst out. Her hands that were holding the armrest behind her gradually tightened. However, the smile on her face was gentle and intimate. She blinked her long eyelashes and looked at Qin Yining with 3 parts curiosity and 7 parts amazement. Her expression was perfectly controlled and made people feel comfortable. Qin Yining came forward and bowed. She respectfully kowtowed and said, "This little girl greets Anyang, eldest princess. May the eldest princess be blessed." Li Helan quickly walked forward and helped her up with both hands. She took Qin Yining's hand and said with a smile, "There is no need to be so polite. Miss Qin is really a talent. That day at the city gate, many people saw you and described you as a fairy. This princess has long wanted to make friends with you. It is rare to see you today. Oh, what a beautiful person. You really make this princess look like a pig or a dog. Eldest princess is overpraising me." Qin Yining bowed in fear and trepidation. She said in a soft and gentle voice, "You are a golden branch and jade leaf, the bright moon in the sky. This little girl is just a weed on the side of the road. This little girl's status is lowly. How could I dare to compete with the bright moon?" Li Helan looked at Qin Yining's graceful figure and lowered head. She looked timid and her voice was low. At a glance, she looked like a well-bred girl from a large family. Her personality was also very weak. How could she be liked by Pang Xiao with this kind of personality? Li Helan smiled contemptuously, but the expression on her face became even more amiable. "Don't say it like that. If we are talking about golden branches and jade leaves, isn't Miss Qin also one? In the future, when your father comes to the capital to become an official, my imperial brother will put him in an important position." Qin Yining hurriedly bowed again in fear and trepidation. "Thank you, eldest princess." "Thank you, your majesty." She was so cowardly and useless. She really had a good appearance. Li Helan smiled and took a flowery golden tassel from her hair. She placed it in Qin Yining's hair bun. "Miss Qin's appearance is too plain. This is a little token of my appreciation. Miss Qin, please don't dislike it." Chapter 319. Oh. Li Helan asked with concern, "Young Miss Qin is such a gentle beauty, why would Brother Xiao ground you?" Then she smiled as if she understood. She patted Qin Yining's shoulder to comfort him. "His temper has been like this since he was young. He's very cold to outsiders. Don't worry, this princess will talk to Brother Xiao later and tell him not to punish you." Qin Yining heard her call him a Brother Xiao and then talk about since he was young and he's very cold to outsiders. He felt his teeth ache. It seemed like even though the eldest princess was engaged to Marquis Dingbei, she still had feelings for Pang Xiao. A well-mannered young lady would follow the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. This eldest princess had grown up being spoiled, so she was used to getting what she wanted. She didn't know how to accept the fact that she couldn't get what she wanted. Now that her marriage wasn't to her liking, she would work hard to fight for true love in the future. Qin Yining's heart was like a spark from a flint. He suddenly understood Your Majesty's intention in granting a marriage between eldest Princess Anyang and Ji Ziyu. Even if Ji Ziyu and Pang Zhishi were good brothers, as long as they were men, they wouldn't tolerate their wives thinking about someone else. Li Qitian was really willing to do anything to provoke these two people, one in the south and one in the north. He was even willing to sacrifice his little sister's lifelong happiness. Qin Yining's heart was like a bolt of lightning in a single breath. She bowed again. Her watery eyes sparkled as she said in a trembling voice, "Many thanks, eldest princess. If eldest princess can say a few good words for this little girl will be deeply grateful." "I'll thank eldest princess first." Li Helan saw her face full of surprise and was so moved that she was about to cry. She was like a harmless little animal that had found food. He despised her even more in his heart, but he also lowered his guard against her. Such a delicate girl was snatched into the mansion by Pang Xiao. It was hard to tell whether he doted on her or abused her. The more such speculations and discussions there were, the worse the reputation of the Qin clan became. To Li Helan, who was a proud daughter of the heavens, Qin Yining was no longer a threat. Li Helan was too lazy to pay attention to people who posed no threat to him. He felt that it was a waste of time to talk to Qin Yining. However, Li Helan wasn't a brainless idiot. The eldest princess' noble status didn't allow her to be too impolite. Therefore, Li Helan held Qin Yining's hand and carefully instructed him on the trivial matters of life. She once again promised that she would plead for Qin Yining and that he could look for her if he needed anything. This kind of polite words were too hypocritical. Even if Qin Yining was an idiot who took polite words seriously, he probably wouldn't be able to get past the palace walls to find the eldest princess. After a short while, the eldest princess took her leave. Qin Yining respectfully went to the courtyard and kowtowed to see her off. When she left, he finally let out a sigh of relief. He didn't say anything to Su Weiji and only nodded his head as a greeting before hurriedly returning to Shui Garden to be grounded. In the carriage, Li Helan had a mocking smile on her lips as she closed her eyes to rest. The head palace maid He Xiang was gently massaging Li Helan's legs while sizing up her master's expression. She softly said, "That Miss Qin is indeed a top-notch beauty. It's a pity that her character is too low." Li Helan lazily opened her eyes. He Xiang said, "As soon as she appeared, she seduced Wang Yi out of character and even tried to snatch him in public. Rumors have already spread that Wang Yi is a hero who can't resist the charms of a beauty. Such a calm and steady hero was actually seduced by the Qin clan to the point where he doesn't care about his reputation. He's truly a hero with a short temper." He Xiang's voice was very gentle and she spoke slowly. Her tone was so soft that it was impossible for people to dislike her. Moreover, Li Helan, who was raised in the depths of the palace, was also very willing to listen to the gossip outside. However, today's rumors made her feel very uncomfortable. Li Helan's finger, which was wearing a pure gold armor, poked the handkerchief in her hand and said casually, "She has a beautiful appearance. However, as a woman, it's also a mistake to be too beautiful." Hearing this, He Xiang asked curiously, "Doesn't Princess Royal think that the Qin clan is deliberately seducing Wang Yi? She doesn't have the initiative in this matter. She's just a weak woman. What can she do? Princess Royal is just too kind." He Xiang's tone was indignant as she said, "In terms of appearance, Princess Royal is comparable to her. In terms of background, Princess Royal is the real golden branch and jade leaf. Just like what the Qin clan said, Princess Royal is the bright moon in the sky while she's just a weed on the roadside. Princess Royal is so much better than her. Wang Yi was still seduced by her. This servant is really not convinced." He Xiang's words successfully provoked the irritation and jealousy in Li Helan's heart. Everyone loved beauty. It was a fact that beautiful women were more attractive to men. There was no need to argue about this. However, her appearance was given by her parents. It was useless for her to be jealous. When she thought of how Pang Shao avoided her and locked up Beauty in his home like a bird in a golden cage, she thought of how Pang Shao avoided her. Even if his reputation of being a lecher spread throughout the capital, he didn't hesitate to do so. It was clear that Pang Shao had long been deeply in love with the Qin clan. Li Helan felt very wronged. Qin Shi, whom she had just met, had defeated her with only her beauty. Then what was her love for Pang Shao all these years? When He Xiang saw Li Helan's appearance, she became even more indignant and said, "Princess Royal has a good temper, but this servant doesn't have any self-restraint. When I saw how good you were to the Qin clan, this servant wanted to rush up and give her a few big slaps on the face for you. Let's see how she can seduce Wang Yi then." For a moment, Li Helan almost ordered the coachman to return to the Wang mansion and do as He Xiang said and give the Qin Yining a few big slaps on the face. However, she closed her eyes and thought for a moment. The surging jealousy in her heart was once again suppressed. The root of this matter is not the Qin clan. It's Pang Zhishi. Pang Zhishi is an ambitious and ruthless person. Purely based on beauty, this princess can't compare to the Qin clan. However, this princess has more than enough to spare when it comes to other things. This princess believes that as time passes, he will realize how beneficial it is for him to become this princess's prince consort. But your prince consort will definitely be North placating Marquis. He Xiang's words poked Li Helan's sore spot. Li Helan took a few deep breaths and shook her head, saying, even if he doesn't become this princess's prince consort, he will know the benefits of following this princess. Li Helan's eyes became stern and firm as she said, He Xiang, go back and send an invitation to the Wang mansion. This princess must see Pang Zhishi tomorrow. I don't believe that he can hide from this princess for much longer. Yes. He Xiang respectfully replied. She could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At the same time, in a private room on the third floor of the Sparrow Tower, Ji Ziyu's fair and slender hand held a white porcelain wine pot. He stretched out his arm and poured a cup of wine for Pang Shao. Pang Zhao's lips curled into a smile. He raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. When Ji Ziyu saw him like this, he couldn't help but smile. He also raised his head and drank his own wine. Chapter 320. After 3 rounds of wine, the atmosphere between the two of them was no longer as tense as it was when they first met. Pang Shao rinsed his mouth and said, "Why did you ask me out today?" Ji Ziyu put down his chopsticks and looked down at the bowl in front of him. He suddenly raised his head and a complicated expression appeared in his shimmering peach blossom eyes. However, he remained silent in the end. Do you like family Qin girls? Pang Shao didn't expect him to ask this question so directly. Thinking about the rumors, he didn't want to hide some things from Ji Ziyu. He nodded and said, "Yes, I like her. But don't forget that she is the daughter of your father's murderer." Ji Ziyu's voice sounded a little anxious. Pang Shao lowered his eyes. His heart was racing. He quickly went through everything that had happened recently in his mind. In the end, he sighed and said, "I know." He still had to be on his guard. He wouldn't harm Ji Ziyu, but he couldn't not guard against others. Ji Ziyu saw his dejected and conflicted expression. He thought about how he had forcefully taken Qin Yining into the Fu and interpreted his reaction as another explanation. He could somewhat understand his complicated feelings. Forget it. Since you like her, it's fine to keep her by your side to serve you in the future. How old is she? She wasn't involved in what happened back then. It's not her fault. Moreover, wasn't she traded away and left in the wilderness? If she wasn't lucky, she wouldn't have lived to this day. Just take it that the suffering she went through back then has already offset her sins. You're a hero. There's no reason for you to lose your temper because of a little girl. In the future, you should stop doing things like forcefully taking a girl and possibly ruining your reputation. Ji Ziyu's voice was low and his tone was calm. However, every word he said was filled with concern for Pang Xiao. Outsiders only knew that Ji Ziyu was a cold-hearted, emotionless ice cube who kept people at a distance. However, Pang Xiao knew that although this person did not usually speak much, he was never stingy with his words. After all, they were sworn brothers. Their many years of brotherhood were not something that could be erased so easily. All right. Although Pang Xiao couldn't explain the details to Ji Ziyu, it didn't stop him from understanding Ji Ziyu's good intentions. Seeing his smile, Ji Ziyu also smiled faintly. Then, he sighed and said, "That day, I was reckless and rushed into the ranks of the surrendered officials. At that time, I didn't know that you had feelings for the Qin clan. I didn't expect you to rescue them. This is mine, not mine. Fortunately, she's fine, and so are you. Otherwise, I'd definitely regret it to death." The matter of Pang Xiao's rescue had already been deemed as nonsense. Zhou Jinwei had already paid a painful price for his several memorials and his actions of teasing His Majesty. Pang Xiao had completely removed himself from this matter. Pang Xiao laughed heartily at Ji Ziyu. "This is all thanks to Master Zhou. I didn't do much." Ji Ziyu raised his eyebrows. "Oh." Pang Xiao didn't continue this topic. He changed the topic and said, "I haven't congratulated you and Princess Royal and Yang. Princess Shang is not necessarily a bad thing for you. You have to make good use of it." Becoming the emperor's son-in-law meant that he was Li Qitian's brother-in-law. Even if Li Qitian was afraid of Xuangue, he had to consider his reputation and the face of his relatives before dealing with Ji Ziyu. Ji Ziyu naturally understood that Pang Xiao was thinking for him. He forced a smile and said, "I don't have any romantic feelings for Anyang. I also know that Anyang likes you. This is your Majesty's decree. Anyang and I can only obey." "I guessed as much." Pang Xiao stretched out his long arm and patted Ji Ziyu's shoulder. "I know best what kind of person you are. You're used to being free. You don't care about any woman. How can you lower yourself to Princess Shang? Once you become the emperor's son-in-law, your future will be set. If you want to improve, you'll have to work 10 times harder than others. I'm not afraid of that." Ji Ziyu smiled faintly and raised his head to take a sip of wine. His Adam's apple, which was half covered by his snow-white collar, moved up and down. "What I'm most afraid of is that the 3 of US brothers will end up killing each other." They had booked the entire 3rd floor of the Sparrow Tower. Moreover, they had trusted aides guarding both inside and outside. As a result, they were increasingly unrestrained in their words. Pang Xiao smiled sadly. As the saying goes, one must plan for one's own position. This isn't without reason. Back then, we were in the same position. Who would have thought that one day, our status would rise and we would hope to obtain more things? It's not out of greed. It's to protect ourselves, Ji Ziyu said. Yes, it's to protect ourselves and the people we care about. Pang Xiao nodded. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but smile bitterly. The two of them were actually in the same situation now. Both of them had achieved great merits and were feared by the emperor. Pang Xiao knew in his heart that their conversation today was actually reserved and guarded. However, he understood that these were unavoidable. Their current position didn't allow them to be as unrestrained as before. The two of them drank and chatted with great tacit understanding. They didn't talk about these serious matters anymore. They only talked about things that happened after they parted. They talked about things they had seen and heard in various places and scenic spots. The northern Taytan and the southern Dayan naturally saw different things. As the two of them talked, they seemed to understand the world that the other had seen. If outsiders saw Pang Xiao and Ji Ziyu now, they would definitely be very surprised. Not to mention outsiders, even Li Qitian had never seen Ji Ziyu so talkative. He had also never seen Pang Xiao take off his various masks and chat with friends. At this time, Pang Xiao and Ji Ziyu both had the same thought. No matter how the world changed, no matter how they walked in the future, as long as they could reminisce about the past together like this when they met, laughing and cursing, putting aside all their identities and conflicts, and no longer haggling and comparing, it was enough to make people feel satisfied. When the sky outside the window was dark and they finished chatting to their heart's content, they ordered someone to come in and help them change their clothes. The two of them drank a little too much. Although they weren't drunk, they were still in high spirits. Ji Ziyu's face was red, which made his handsome appearance even more beautiful. Peng Jishi, your silver-white Fergana horse is with me now. I won't give it to you. That won't do. I gave it to Sister Yi. Under the influence of alcohol, Peng Xiao was a little excited and blurted out Qin Yining's maiden name. Ji Ziyu frowned and said, even if you don't want it, it has to be mine. I picked it up and it's mine. Why would a girl from the Qin clan want such a good horse? She's keeping it for fun. Ji Ziyu snorted. I don't care. I'm just informing you. If I don't give it to you, are you going to snatch it from me? Really? Pang Xiao laughed. I didn't expect you to be so shameless. You're snatching Sister Yi's things in broad daylight. You're a man, yet you're snatching a girl's mount. Aren't you ashamed? It's not just snatching a mount. Cough cough. Ji Ziyu's throat and eyes were dry. He couldn't help but cough and vomit in the end. The attendants quickly helped Ji Ziyu rinse his mouth. Pang Xiao also wanted to vomit as he watched from the side. Ji Ziyu waved his hand at Pang Xiao without looking up. Pang Xiao said, I'll find you for a drink another day. I'll go back first. Ji Ziyu nodded silently. Chapter 321. On the way back, it was snowing heavily and the sky was already dark. Therefore, Pang Xiao and Huzi simply galloped on their horses and returned to the Wang mansion before the clock struck midnight. Pang Xiao strode in quickly with a horsewhip in his hand and asked casually, what's going on in the mansion today? The doorman followed with his head down and immediately said, Anyang's eldest princess came again today. Oh. Pang Xiao paused and asked, what did she come for? She said she wanted to see you. I said you weren't here and the eldest princess refused to leave. Later, Mr. Su came out to deal with her. I don't know what happened. You did well. Pang Xiao patted the young doorman's shoulder and said, it's cold. Wear more clothes to be careful of catching a cold. The doorman immediately laughed with joy and said loudly, yes. Thank you, Wang Yi. Pang Xiao nodded and told Huzi, please ask Mr. Su and Mr. Xia to wait for me in the study. I'll go to Pine Crane Hall first. Yes. Huzi bowed and left. Pang Xiao strode quickly through the Chuehua gate and went straight to Pine Crane Hall. As soon as he arrived at the gate, Dahe and Whitey ran out and circled around him, wagging their tails vigorously. Pang Xiao stroked Dahe and Whitey a few times and entered the gate. Zhao Kun, the housekeeper's wife of the Yao clan, came up with a smile and said, Wang Yi really came back. Have you eaten? Yes. As he spoke, he went up the stairs. The maidservants lifted the warm curtains and pushed open the door for him. After Pang Xiao entered, he threw his cloak and horsewhip to Sun He, the head maidservant of the Yao clan, and quickly walked into the side room. Yao Qinggu was sitting cross-legged on the Kong bed, smoking a cigarette. The Yao clan and Mrs. Ma were sitting on the other side of the Kong bed, talking while eating peanuts. Seeing that Pang Xiao had returned, Mrs. Ma smiled and said, "Dai Fu, have you had dinner?" "Yes, I have." Pang Xiao bowed to the elders and asked straightforwardly, "Did Princess Royal make things difficult for you today?" Yao Qinggu's lips curled up with the tobacco pipe in his mouth. He smacked his lips unhurriedly and said, "No." Ma Shi said straightforwardly, "Don't worry." As soon as he heard that the eldest princess came, Sir Su immediately ordered people to tell us to close the door and pretend that we weren't here. Not long after, the person next to Yi Las came to give her another round of instructions. "If you ask me, there's nothing to be afraid of. Could it be that she's going to eat people? Mother, the Grand Princess is a noble lady. Mr. Su and Sister Yi are just afraid that we will be wronged when we meet the Grand Princess." "What grievances? What can the Grand Princess do to an old woman like me? Now that she's in power, she's different from before." "Really?" Yao Qinggu casually knocked his pipe on the edge of the Kong a few times and said, "The Grand Princess is a member of the imperial family. As for us, we are Dai Fu's maternal grandparents and mother. When the Grand Princess sees our Dai Fu, she likes him very much and wants to marry into our family. But I heard that the Grand Princess has already been betrothed to the Marquis of Dingbei. She must have come with emotions. Sir Su and the family Qin Lass are afraid that the Grand Princess will be the first to eat, which will make us feel wronged." Mrs. Ma thought it through and nodded. She turned to Pang Xiao and said, "Didn't the Grand Princess learn a lot of rules in the palace? Could it be that she deliberately came to make things difficult for us?" The Yao clan smiled and said, "Mother, if the Grand Princess doesn't make things difficult for us and is polite to us when she sees us, even if we treat her with respect, it's hard to guarantee that the Grand Princess won't secretly think that we neglected her, so it's best not to meet her." Pang Xiao sat on the edge of the Kong and listened to the discussion of his family. He knew that the elders didn't suffer any losses, so he was really relieved. Mrs. Ma smiled and said to Pang Xiao, "Kid, you have a good eye. Sir Su and Sir Xia can see the things around you clearly. That's their duty as counselors, but Yi Las can also see it so clearly. She has talent and looks, and it's enough for her to be with you. You can't bully her." Pang Xiao laughed, "How can I? Why would I bully her?" The Yao clan said, "You grounded her, isn't that bullying?" "That's because I had no choice. She's a delicate girl, but she was reprimanded and grounded by you. It's already hard enough for her reputation to be ruined. Today, the Grand Princess came and even asked to see her." The Yao clan said to Pang Xiao seriously, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Since you like her, you should be more attentive and care for her. Our family doesn't have a heartless man who does one thing in front of others. You should also learn to be more attentive. The Grand Princess is a proud daughter of God, so she must be used to being domineering. She can't see your grandparents and me when she comes to our house, and I don't know how she'll make things difficult for Sister Yi when she sees her." Hearing this, Pang Xiao completely understood what happened today. He actually only cared about the elderly and forgot about Qin Yining. Pang Xiao felt extremely guilty. He stood up and said, "Mother, you're right. I'll go see Sister Yi now." Mrs. Ma said, "Go quickly." "Oh, right." She turned around and took out a large package from the cabinet and stuffed it into Pang Xiao's hands. "Bring this to Yi Las. It's cold here in winter, and I can tell that her small body can't resist the cold. Don't let her catch a cold." Pang Xiao opened the package. Inside was a sable fur cloak and a sable fur hood. The edges of the hood and the collar of the cloak were inlaid with 3-inch wide sable fur. The inside of the cloak was also inlaid with a thick lining. It felt soft and warm to the touch. Mrs. Ma said with a smile, "Don't be fooled by the color. The fur is good. I asked your mother to pick it out. It's important that it's warm and doesn't need to stand out too much. Anyway, Elas is very beautiful. I'll thank you on her behalf." Pang Xiao smiled and wrapped the cloak and hood properly. He then took the package and went out. Mrs. Ma didn't forget to stretch her neck and said, "Hey, tell Elas to tell someone to tell me if she needs anything." "Got it." Pang Xiao's voice was already outside the door. Yao Qinggu smiled and grabbed a handful of peanuts. He laughed and shook his head. This brat. When Pang Xiao avoided the crowd and arrived at Shui Garden, the snow had already stopped. The courtyard was covered with a white carpet, and the warm light was projected on the ground through the window lattice, forming an orange light and shadow. Two figures were vaguely reflected in the window. Pang Xiao laughed. The feeling that someone was waiting for him to go home made him feel unprecedentedly at ease. There were old women walking around in the courtyard. When they saw Pang Xiao standing at the door with a package, they hurriedly bowed. The greeting alarmed the people in the room. Soon, Xian Yun lifted the warm curtain and said, "Wang Yi is back." "Yes." Pang Xiao entered the door with the package. "Miss just ordered someone to prepare some hangover soup for you. She said that you would definitely drink wine at the banquet today. However, you guessed wrong. Wang Yi doesn't look drunk." Qin Yining's laughter came from the room. "Even if he isn't drunk, he must have drunk wine. You'd better drink some hangover soup. It's good for your health." Pang Xiao entered the room with a smile and said, "Drink some. It's all prepared. It'll be a waste if you don't drink it." "What are you doing?" Qin Yining was leaning against a big pillow. There were 3 silk lamps on the Kong cabinet and the Kong table, and he was doing needlework with the light. "I'm making a warm hat for old madam." Pang Xiao smiled. "You miss Grandma, and she also misses you. She was afraid that you would be cold, so she specially asked my mother to buy this for you. Try it on." He put the big package on the Kong and showed Qin Yining what was inside. Qin Yining put down the needle and thread, stroked the smooth mink fur with his white hands, and held it in his arms. He said, "It's so warm. Old madam and old madam are so considerate. Please thank them for me." "What are you thanking them for?" "They really think that you're my wife." Pang Xiao looked at her porcelain white face pressed against the dark cloak under the light. She was as cute as a little kitten. He couldn't help but stretch out his arms to hold Qin Yining in his arms and bury his face in her shoulder. "Sister Yi, you're so kind." In front of the door, Xian Yun was about to bring in the hangover soup. Seeing this, she hurriedly retreated. Qin Yining blushed and hugged Pang Xiao's neck. "What's wrong?" "You've been wrong today." Pang Xiao smiled and kissed her forehead. Qin Yining shook his head. "What's there to be wronged about? The Princess Royal didn't make things difficult for me. I just needed to be humble and not offend her. I'm familiar with dealing with this kind of thing." Speaking of today's matter, Qin Yining sat up straight on his lap and said seriously, "I think your Majesty's intention to sow discord between you and Marquis Dingbei is very clear. You have to be more careful." "Yes." Pang Xiao was a smart person. Qin Yining had already figured out what Li Helan was doing after interacting with Ji Ziyu. "Don't worry. I don't have any feelings for the Princess Royal. I won't give anyone a chance to attack me." "That's good." Qin Yining leaned on his shoulder and asked, "Is your Majesty still asking you to continue resting at home?" "Yes, but I think this kind of life won't last for long. Now that the surrendered officials of the Yan dynasty have arrived, it's time to reward them. Your Majesty keeps asking me to rest and recuperate. It's hard to convince the public." Qin Yining nodded. In any case, you have to be careful. I think things are getting more and more complicated. You have to be more vigilant. Pang Xiao rubbed his chin against her forehead. You only care about me. Family Qin has already checked into the hotel today. Aren't you going to ask them? Ask what? Qin Yining said, my father and mother didn't come back. Old Madam brought my second uncle and third uncle to stay in the hotel. I believe they've already heard that I was forcefully taken into the residence by you. If they really care about me, they'll definitely come and find me first. If they don't, then it's good that both sides are at peace for the time being and don't interfere with each other. Hearing her tone, Peng Xiao knew that she didn't like Family Qin's old madam to the core. Qin Yining wasn't a saint after all. Old madam didn't treat her as one of her own, so she didn't want to take the initiative to get close to her. Peng Xiao's forceful taking spread like wildfire. The whole city knew about it. If old madam cared about her, she would definitely come and find Peng Xiao to ask for an explanation. I'm waiting to see old madam's, second uncle's, and third uncle's reactions. After knowing what they think, I'll be able to make a decision about the real estate. Real estate? Yes. My family members are all here. They can't stay in the hotel forever, right? It doesn't matter what official Your Majesty is appointed to. We all want to settle down in the capital. Chapter 322. Are you planning to buy a house for your family? Peng Xiao kicked off his boots and sat on the heated Kong. He put Qin Yining in front of him again and hugged her as if she was a big soft doll. But your family may not accept your kindness. Moreover, your family hasn't separated yet, right? Qin Yining leaned comfortably on Peng Xiao's chest and looked at the complicated carvings of magpies on the branches on the mahogany cabinet. She said in a lazy voice, indeed, we haven't separated yet, but we can't write two Qin characters in one stroke. I bought a house for my father. Although my father's whereabouts are unknown, I believe that with his wisdom, he will be able to turn misfortune into blessing. He hasn't come back yet, so he must be held back by something. You are right. Although my people didn't find the whereabouts of my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they didn't find any bad news. At this time, no bad news is good news. With father-in-law's wisdom, they must be safe and sound. Peng Xiao said with certainty. Qin Yining's face was burning red. She twisted her body to get out of his arms and said angrily, what father-in-law and mother-in-law? Who said that I want to marry you? Peng Xiao giggled and pulled her back into his arms. Outside, people are saying that I am a hero who is short-tempered and fell for you. If you don't marry me, who else do you want to marry? Moreover, my sister Yi is smart and filial. Today, she protected the elders in the manor and later, she will buy a house for her parents. Such a good daughter-in-law is hard to find even with a lantern. After passing this village, I won't be able to meet this shop again. Glib-tongued. Qin Yining snorted, but her heart was very sweet. She thought for a while and said, however, I can't do this directly. I can't let old madam and the others know that I bought the house. Otherwise, there will be more trouble in the future. I can find a reliable person and put my name on this person. Then, this person will make a deal with my father on the surface. I only need to hide in the dark. I can't show my wealth. You're so smart. Peng Xiao kissed her cheek. I haven't said anything yet, but you've already figured it out. How about this, you don't have to worry about buying a house. I will secretly send people to keep an eye on it. However, every inch of land in the capital is worth an inch of gold. Your family doesn't have any foundation here, so it won't be possible to buy a house as big as the original one. It doesn't have to be as big as the original house. A normal courtyard with 2 entrances will do. The important thing is that the location is better. Right now, my family doesn't have that many people, and I don't know what will happen in the future, so there's no need to tie the money to the property. When I need it, I won't be able to take out the money. Who knows, my father might have other plans in the future. Yes. I'll get someone to keep an eye out for him. Pang Xiao caressed her smooth cheeks and smiled. Although your men haven't come to the capital yet, I'm here. If there's anything you want to do or if it's inconvenient for you, just tell me. I can help you do it. I won't be polite with you. Pang Xiao kissed her affectionately and said, I have a meeting with Mr. Su and Mr. Xia, so I'll leave now. Yes. They weren't married yet. Pang Xiao just sat there for a while and glanced at her. Who knew how many flowers would spread outside? Even if she already had the reputation of being snatched, and her reputation had long been ruined, the people who served her knew how long Pang Xiao would stay every time. Qin Yining still had to go inside, so they didn't ask him to stay for long. Qin Yining asked Xian Yinduan to make hangover soup for Pang Xiao. He sent him to the corridor before returning to his room. Pang Xiao was reluctant to leave. He looked back 3 times with every step he took as he left Su Shui Garden. When the door of Su Shui Garden closed behind him, he composed himself and quickly went to the study. Su Weiji and Xia Yu bowed to Pang Xiao. Xia Yu presented a hairpin invitation with both hands. Pang Xiao smelled the strong fragrance of rouge. He frowned and asked, Who sent this? Wang Yi, it was sent by the palace. Xia Yu's smile was normal, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes seemed to hide a hint of ridicule. Pang Xiao was very unhappy. He took the invitation and glanced at it. He threw it away angrily, and it landed on the ground. Such behavior. She has the nerve to say that she's a daughter of the imperial family. She hired a famous teacher and a nanny to teach her. I don't know which dog she learned it from. Su Weiji picked up the invitation and looked at it, then handed it to Xia Yu. Xia Yu looked at it and put it back on the square table. She couldn't help but tease, it's all because Wang Yi is too charming. Who else can you blame? Pang Xiao was angry and amused by Xia Yu's words. It's a bad habit of being spoiled since childhood. She must get whatever she wants. Her life had been too smooth sailing. My sister Yi is also the young miss of a large family. She's not as frivolous as her. Su Weiji and Xia Yu looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Xia Yu said, Wang Yi is not a cloud but a mountain. However, young Miss Qin is indeed a good girl. She deserves Wang Ye's praise. Su Weiji said, but what your majesty values is Anyang's eldest princess's personality. She has the determination to win you over, but she also has the guts to do things that are out of line. If this continues, the relationship between you and North Placating Marquis will be irreparable. Sister Yi said the same thing just now. The only thing I can do is make my attitude clear and let North Placating Marquis see that I have no interest in Anyang. Then Wang Yi won't be going to tomorrow's banquet? Li Helan invited Pang Xiao to the banquet in the post. Pang Xiao said, not only won't he go, but he will also strictly refuse. Sir Su, I'll have to trouble you to write on my behalf. Just say that I'm not feeling well and need to rest in the residence. Also, ask the eldest princess to be more careful. It's very cold right now and it's better to not go out. Yes. Su Weiji stood up and went to the table to grind an ink stick to write a reply. Pang Xiao also arranged for Xia Yu to secretly find a suitable residence. When she found it, she would inform him. The night passed in silence. The next morning, when Li Helan was eating breakfast with the Empress Dowager, she received a reply from a palace servant. Li Helan happily put down her ivory chopsticks and opened the reply with a smile. When she saw the words clearly, her smile froze. After reading it carefully, Lee Heelan was so angry that she kicked over the embroidered stool beside her. Lon, what's wrong? Who bullied you? Tell Ija will definitely help you. When the Empress Dowager saw that her beloved daughter was so angry, she pulled her into her arms and coaxed her. Lee Heelan wiped her tears, feeling wronged. Pang Jishi refused to attend the banquet, and the content was very perfunctory. The most important thing is that he even ordered someone to write the reply. Daughter can recognize his handwriting. This is definitely not his handwriting. He was so stingy that he didn't even give daughter a word or two. This is simply looking down on daughter. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she asked about the details. When she heard Lee Heelan's story, her face finally darkened. Lon, why did you take the initiative to send a reply to Pang Jishi? You should know that you're already engaged and your future husband is Marquis Dingbei. Even if you're a princess, your future life will be tied to Marquis Dingbei. Why did you send an invitation to Marquis Dingbei at this time? Aren't you afraid of causing a misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding at all. I like Pang Jishi. Everyone in the world knows that. So what? Imperial brother wants me to marry Ji Lan, but I don't like Ji Lan's personality at all. It's impossible for us to get along. Imperial brother is now the emperor, so he doesn't care about me anymore. Lee Heelan sobbed, feeling wronged. She hugged the Empress Dowager's arm and cried. Her tears fell on the back of the Empress Dowager's hand. The Empress Dowager loved her daughter dearly. However, she also knew that since the emperor had issued a decree and announced it to the world, this marriage could not be changed. Moreover, the emperor had also told her about the marriage between Anyang and Marquis Dingbei. She also felt that the young man was not bad. Therefore, the Empress Dowager's face darkened and she reprimanded, "Shut up. It's all because Ija has spoiled you. You've learned the rules for so many years. How can you not know that marriage is decided by your parents? Imperial mother. Why don't you think about me at all? Back then, if you didn't always say that Pang Jishi and I were a match made in heaven and that I would marry Pang Jishi when I grew up, what would I do? Do you think I have any special feelings for him? You were the ones who instilled this idea in me, so I took it seriously. I always thought about him and wanted to marry him when I grew up. But now, you overruled the past with a single sentence, and even blamed everything on me. What crimes have I committed?" Lee Heelan's resentment came from the bottom of her heart. She had been holding it in for a long time. She only dared to cry in front of her mother. She was not stupid. Although she didn't know what her imperial brother wanted to do, Lee Heelan understood that her marriage was related to the political affairs of the imperial court and could not be changed. The more she knew that the current situation could not be changed because of her wishes, the more anxious and unconvinced she was. Pang Xiao refused to go to the appointment and even ordered someone to reply with a letter that appeared to be concerned about her health, but was actually reminding her to go out less. It really hurt her heart and hurt her self-esteem. Thinking that she might not have a chance with Pang Xiao in this life, Lee Heelan simply lay in the Empress Dowager's arms and cried loudly. "Ah! What's wrong?" Right at this time, Li Qitian's voice suddenly came from outside the hall. Lee Heelan's crying stopped abruptly. Because she was too nervous, she even hiccuped. "The Emperor is here." The Empress Dowager glared at Lee Heelan, who was still sobbing, then turned to Li Qitian and said with a smile, "Have you eaten breakfast?" Li Qitian stepped forward and bowed to the Empress Dowager. She said with a smile, "I've already eaten. Today, the ministers are on break, so Jin wanted to take advantage of the time to visit Imperial Mother." Then she turned to Lee Heelan, "Lon, why are you crying so sadly? Who bullied you?" Lee Heelan wanted to say, "You bullied me," but she didn't dare to be impudent in front of Li Qitian. She could only shake her head. Li Qitian saw the reply from the corner of his eyes. He frowned and said, "Who gave you this letter?" Li Helan was so shocked that she almost jumped up. She hurriedly put the letter away. "No one. A girl wrote it for fun. Does Imperial Brother want to know the content?" Chapter 323. Li Helan heard this and 2 more streams of tears fell. She really wanted to grab Li Qitian's hand and ask him, "Is what you said true? Will you really protect me no matter what happens? If you really want to protect me, then marry me off to Pang Zhishi." But Li Helan was not a brainless and rash person. Although she could be a bit arrogant in front of her mother, when she saw Li Qitian, she still knew her limits. Ever since her older brother ascended the throne, their relationship could not be the same as before. They were no longer brother and sister of an ordinary family. He was the emperor and she was the sister of an official. To put it bluntly, her life's happiness was built on her older brother's favor. A single word from Li Qitian could determine her happiness or misfortune, life or death. So even if she was dissatisfied in her heart, she could only grit her teeth and bury her thoughts deep inside. In front of Li Qitian, she could only be an obedient little sister. "Royal brother, Lan knows. It's just a small matter, it's nothing. With royal brother favoring Lan, who would dare bully me?" When Li Qitian heard this, he couldn't help rubbing Li Helan's head. In the end, this little sister was his only little sister. He had indeed used this matter to his advantage. Forget it. He could confirm that Li Helan had already contacted Pang Xiao, so he could forget about it. He couldn't ask Li Helan, a woman, to have the same political stance as him. "Your royal sister-in-law made a new set of hair ornaments a few days ago. This one thought it was pretty good, so I had her make one for you. Remember to wear it later. You are the eldest princess, a golden branch and jade leaf. Don't mistreat yourself just to save money. Even if the national treasury is not rich, this one can still support you." As he spoke, he tapped her nose. Was this because he felt guilty and wanted to make up for it in material terms? Li Helan secretly sighed in her heart. She happily smiled and bowed. "Many thanks, royal brother, many thanks, royal sister-in-law. We're family, there's no need to thank us." Li Qitian was infected by Li Helan's smile and his mood improved a lot. He turned to chat with the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager relied on the emperor, so she listened to Li Qitian's words and would cater to Li Qitian's mood. She was a smart woman. Just like Li Helan, she knew who her happiness came from. So she never had any conflicts with Li Qitian, and the relationship between mother and son was also very good. Li Qitian chatted happily and left in a good mood. After Li Qitian left the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful, the Empress Dowager sent everyone away, leaving only Li Helan by her side. She pulled her and persuaded her in a low voice, "Lan, you have to be more open-minded. You already have the happiness that a woman can get in her life. Don't be greedy. As for Niu Zhishi, I don't know why you've chosen him, but you have to know that it's impossible between the two of you. Your imperial brother wishes to marry you to Marquis North Placating. This is already set in stone and there's no possibility of changing it. That Marquis North Placating is also a person with shocking talent. You have to be content, understand?" Li Helan looked at the Empress Dowager without saying a word. After a long time, she slowly nodded. The Empress Dowager knew that Li Helan didn't listen to her advice. She sighed helplessly. A mother knows her daughter best. The Empress Dowager's guess was right. Li Helan returned to her side chamber, buried herself in the quilt, and cried fiercely. After venting enough, she ordered He Xiang, who was beside her. "Tell them to prepare the carriage." I'm going to personally wait in front of Prince Zhongshuan's residence. I don't believe that Pang Zhishi won't come out. Princess Royal. You don't have to persuade him. I personally went to his door, but he pretended not to see me. I sent an invitation, but he had an excuse to refuse. If I don't go to his door and block him, when will he be able to see him? But, you're a noble, don't mention this word again. Li Helan finally exploded in anger. Just because I'm a noble, I can't hang my happiness and future on the person I like. If you don't even give me a chance to fight, I'd rather not be a noble. He Xiang seemed to be scared by Li Helan's roar. She stood there in a daze, unable to react. Li Helan angrily said, "Why aren't you going to tell people to prepare the carriage?" Yes. He Xiang's face was pale after being reprimanded. She respectfully saluted and quickly retreated. When she was outside the hall, she let out a sigh of relief. She said a few words to an inconspicuous servant outside the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful before going to prepare the carriage. Wang Yi, do you want to tell Miss Qin first and take her to see the residence? Xia Yu asked with a smile. Pang Xiao shook his head, put on the fur coat, picked up the horsewhip, and said with a smile, "This king will go and have a look first. If this king doesn't like it, then there's no need to show it to her. However, this king can rest assured that Mr. Xia will handle things well. I believe that the residence is suitable." Xia Yu said with a smile, "It just so happens that my family is moving out of the capital. It's ambiguous whether they will sell the residence or not. Let's go and have a look first. If Wang Yi thinks it's suitable, then we can discuss it later." Pang Xiao nodded and asked people to prepare the horse. He took Huzi and Xia Yu and rode out of the Wang mansion. Unexpectedly, as soon as they left the mansion, they saw a carriage parked at the corner of the street suddenly open the door and lift the warm curtain. Li Helan was wearing an exquisite white fur coat. Her fair face was wrapped in the fur collar, which made her red lips and white teeth even more. In addition, her eyes contained a sense of shyness and sadness. The feelings in her eyes were like the vast ocean, which could drown people directly. "Wang Yi, it's cold and you haven't recovered yet. Riding a horse through the snow, where do you want to go?" Li Helan got off the carriage. After all, she couldn't act domineering in front of Pang Xiao. She could only speak with a gentle smile, but the sadness in her voice deepened. Pang Xiao originally sat on the horse and didn't want to pay attention to anyone. However, Li Helan was the eldest princess and had a noble status. Moreover, the other party had gotten off the carriage. If he sat on the horse and spoke to her in a condescending manner, it wouldn't be appropriate. Therefore, Pang Xiao jumped down from his horse in a natural and unrestrained manner. Then, he bowed and said, "So it's the eldest princess. You also know that the weather is cold and the ground is frozen. Why didn't you rest in the palace? Why did you stay here in the snow? Why? Don't you know? Imperial brother bestowed me to Jilan. I'm going to marry Jilan. What do you think I should do?" Her questioning tone made it seem as if Pang Xiao had abandoned her after taking advantage of her. Pang Xiao raised his brows and said with a smile, "I already know about this. For such a happy occasion, I naturally have to prepare a generous gift." "You?" Li Helan looked at the man she yearned for day and night. She thought that he would have feelings for her and be reluctant to part with her. Who would have thought that when she threw the question to him, he would only say that he would prepare a gift for her? Li Helan's tears couldn't help falling. The grievances she had suffered over the past few days made her unable to control herself. She sobbed as she asked, "What do you mean by this? Why are you hiding from me? Could it be that the past between us doesn't exist? After all these years, could it be that you don't know my feelings for you?" Pang Xiao heard this and tightly knit his brows. Chapter 324. Pang Shao was very observant and alert. When the gazes of the people behind him were focused on him and Li Helan, he had already noticed that their every move was being monitored by others. His mind quickly calculated who it was. He respectfully bowed to Li Helan and said seriously, "Eldest princess, please conduct yourself with dignity." "Conduct myself with dignity." Li Helan saw Pang Shao's attitude and finally felt despair. He looked up at him and said in a tearful voice, "All these years, all I wanted was to marry you when I grew up. If you didn't have any feelings for me, why didn't you refuse when Imperial Mother and Elder Brother made a joke about us? If you had rejected me earlier, would I, Li Helan, be someone who would shamelessly pester you? You gave me hope and made me dream of you when I grew up, but now you're shrinking back. Pang Zhishi, are you even a man?" Eldest princess said it was a joke. Why take it so seriously? Moreover, this Pang has never interacted with eldest princess before. You and I aren't familiar, so eldest princess, please be careful with your words. Pang Shao knit his brows and took a few steps back. Huzi, who was behind him, secretly wrote the character North on his left hand. Pang Shao immediately understood. The person who was watching them in the dark was Ji Ziyu. Ji Ziyu couldn't have just happened to pass by. Someone must have told him. Eldest Princess and Yang was already engaged to Ji Ziyu and would be married soon. Even if Ji Ziyu didn't have any feelings for Yang, any man who saw his wife entangled with another man, and this person was his good friend, wouldn't feel good. Among the generals of Dezhou, he and Ji Ziyu were one from the south and one from the north. If the two of them were close, as long as they worked together, it would be a great matter that could change the dynasty. How could the emperor allow them to continue being brothers? That was why there were so many people trying to sow discord. Pang Shao could understand the emperor's actions, but he could not forgive him. He gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked. It seemed that he and Ji Ziyu had unknowingly stepped into a trap since the first time Yang came to the Fu to look for him. Moreover, this matter was a dead end with no solution. It was impossible for Ji Ziyu to refuse the marriage. Anyang must be his wife, and how could a man allow his wife to have another man in her heart? At this moment, Pang Shao felt that no matter what he did, Ji Ziyu would misunderstand him. This was the brilliance of Your Majesty's plan. No matter how clear they were about the situation, they had no choice but to misunderstand each other and develop animosity in their hearts. However, how could he, Pang Shao, be a soft persimmon that could be easily squashed? Even if misunderstandings were bound to occur, he would never allow himself to be taken advantage of so easily. Even if he were to suffer a loss, he would suffer a great loss and let others know that he had suffered a loss. Thinking of this, Pang Shao's words were no longer polite. The eldest princess must have caught a cold and is speaking nonsense because her mind isn't clear, right? If the eldest princess is sick, then go see a doctor. It's best if you don't walk around outside. What are you saying? I'm not sick. I'm not speaking nonsense. Pang Zhishi. If you're not a man and don't dare admit it, then just say you don't dare. Why blame it all on me? Saying I'm sick. Ha! I'm very clear-headed right now. I've never been this clear-headed before. If you can still act like a shrew when you're clear-headed, then you haven't learned the rules well. Your Majesty is busy with the court and the Empress is busy with managing the harem, so you've delayed teaching the eldest princess. This king is Your Majesty's sworn younger brother and can be considered half an elder brother to the eldest princess. This matter can't be messed around with by the eldest princess, breaking the rules of the boudoir and losing the dignity of the imperial family. Pang Zhao's face sunk as he ordered He Xiang and the other palace maids behind Li Helan, help the eldest princess get on the carriage. This king will personally send the eldest princess to see Your Majesty. You actually dare to say that I don't have rules. You have rules. Pang Xiao gave a cold laugh. Haven't you seen a well-mannered girl with rules who doesn't care about the face of her future husband's family and acts like a shrew in the middle of the street? You don't care about your dignity. Your Majesty still needs the imperial family's face and third brother still needs to keep his dignity. Eldest princess, please get on the carriage. Don't force me to speak too harshly. Pang Xiao was a ruthless character who wouldn't even blink when he beheaded his enemies on the battlefield. Pang Xiao was a ferocious character who wouldn't even bat an eyelid when he beheaded his enemies on the battlefield. At this moment, he was enraged and his domineering and bloodthirsty aura made Li Helan's hair stand on end. She couldn't help but shudder even though she was unwilling to accept this. Li Helan tried to act tough and said, "The one who needs to learn the rules is you, Pang Zhishi. You're just a Wang Yi and you're not even an official at home. Where do you get the dignity to lecture this princess?" Pang Zhao's face became even colder. His phoenix eyes were filled with a dark anger and a storm that was about to erupt. Li Helan felt regret after he scolded him. After all, men had to have dignity. Not to mention that the reason Pang Xiao didn't have an official position was because her royal brother wasn't willing to give it to him. Could it be that Pang Xiao distanced himself from her because her royal brother didn't put him in an important position? Just as Li Helan was imagining a few possibilities for himself, He Xiang and a few palace servants had already arrived. They prepared a stool for the carriage and forcefully helped Li Helan onto the carriage. Li Helan didn't forget to struggle when he got on the carriage. He only stopped when the servant girls held him down. Pang Xiao calmly mounted the horse. He didn't look at the residents and told Xiaoyu to go back first. He only brought Huzi to escort Li Helan back to the palace. It was as if he had caught a child who had done something wrong and was escorting him to see his parents. From beginning to end, Pang Xiao didn't turn around to look at Jiziyu. He acted as if he didn't know that he had come. Xiaoyu also had a sense of propriety. She looked in the direction that Pang Xiao and his entourage left. She sighed and retreated while muttering to herself. Then she lowered her head and walked up the steps to the palace. Looking at the trampled and dirty snow in front of the palace, Jiziyu's face was expressionless like an ice sculpture. There was no joy or anger in his eyes. He turned back and mounted the horse. When the attendants saw Jiziyu's expression, he couldn't help but keep quiet out of fear. His fiancée actually pestered his good brother before the wedding. If this kind of thing spread, he would lose a lot of face. He didn't even know if there was already a green cloud above his head. The attendant didn't dare to say a word. He also didn't dare to guess what kind of emotions were hidden under Jiziyu's seemingly calm face. He could only lower his head and follow behind. When Xiaoyu returned to the palace, the regret and confusion on her face disappeared. She rushed straight to Su Shui Garden as if she was flying. Qin Yining was teaching Lian Xiaozhou how to read. When he heard the call from outside, he hurriedly put down his brush and let Lian Xiaozhou practice on her own. He then went out to welcome her. "Teacher Xia, what happened? Why are you in such a hurry?" Xiaoyu cupped her hands towards Qin Yining and said, "Young Miss Qin, Wang Yi originally wanted to see the new residents today. Who would have thought that he would meet the eldest princess as soon as he left the palace?" Xiaoyu told Qin Yining in detail about what had happened in front of the palace. Finally, she said, "North placating Marquis was hiding in the corner at the time and saw everything clearly. I don't know what he's thinking." Wang Yi cleverly considered himself as a foster brother. Right now, he's escorting the eldest princess back to the palace to see your majesty. Qin Yining frowned and thought for a moment. He then smiled and shook his head. "You don't have to worry. Wang Yi should be able to safely escape from this matter. Your majesty won't do anything to Wang Yi." "Oh?" Xiaoyu asked, "Why do you say that?" "Because Wang Yi kept you in the palace and this matter happened in public. It's too easy to find a witness. If the eldest princess of Anyang doesn't want to be known as a dissolute woman and tarnish the dignity of the imperial family, your majesty can't pursue this matter. Even if he's questioned by Wang Yi, your majesty will only push the blame to the eldest princess and properly educate the eldest princess. Xia Yu smiled and nodded, you're right. Your majesty is really unscrupulous in order to sow discord between Wang Yi and North Placating Marquis. It's no wonder that Wang Yi has something on them. Your majesty cares a lot about his reputation and will never allow this matter to spread. However, it's not easy to deal with North Placating Marquis. When Xia Yu said this, she helplessly shook her head and sighed, Your Majesty's plan is meticulous. The original intention of this matter was to create animosity between Wang Yi and North Placating Marquis. Perhaps this goal has already been achieved. An emperor's heart is truly unfathomable. When he truly sits in that position, in order to protect what he has, it's hard to guarantee that he won't lose some things. Qin Yining slowly walked to the window and pondered for a moment before saying, Right now, we can only hope that North Placating Marquis is a sensible person. North Placating Marquis is extremely intelligent. It's impossible that he doesn't know that your majesty deliberately let him see this. Xia Yu said, but even so, as a man, he will never tolerate this kind of thing. This is your majesty's brilliance. Qin Yining nodded in agreement. He only felt that Pang Zhao's current situation was truly very difficult. In the past, when they were in Dian, Pang Zhao looked so glorious, but in reality, he was being roasted on a fire, and it wasn't just a fire. If she wanted to be together with Pang Zhao and live a very peaceful life, then she had to do her best to scheme for him. She couldn't relax for even a moment. Mississippi, at this moment, a maidservant's voice came from outside the door. What is it? Qin Yining walked to the door and lifted the warm curtain. Xian Yun bowed in the corridor and said, Miss, someone outside said that Matriarch Qin and Second Madam Qin have come to visit. They also brought your 3 maidservants. Qin Yining was stunned and turned to look at Xia Yu. Xia Yu was also very surprised. I already knew that people from your residence had arrived at the guest house, but I didn't hear any news. I didn't expect that they would actually come today. Qin Yining pondered for a moment and said, I'll have to trouble Sir Xia to visit my grandmother and second aunt on my behalf. Tell them that I've been grounded by Wang Yi and it's inconvenient for me to go out. My 3 maidservants are Bing Tang, Qiu Lu, and Ji Yun. If their names match, I'll have to trouble Sir Xia to bring them to see me. Miss, you don't plan to see the matriarch of your residence? Qin Yining shook his head and said, the matriarch is used to seeking only benefits. I want to see what she wants to do. Besides, I've been kidnapped by Wang Yi. How can I still move freely? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.